blamed for breaking.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Trump's latest set of tariffs has gone into effect on dozens of countries. This comes after the 10% tariffs took effect last weekend. U.S. tariffs on China have now soared more than 100%. China is retaliating. It has increased its tariffs on goods imported from the U.S. to 84%. Wall Street has started falling in today's trading after several days of losses. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says, unlike China, U.S. allies are prepared to negotiate new trade deals.
At a point in the not-too-distant future, I think we will be back to firing on all cylinders. We have the response to the countries who want to come and sit at the table rather than escalate has been overwhelming. Our allies, Japan, South Korea, India.
He spoke to Fox News, but China is not alone. The European Union members have voted to retaliate with tariffs on billions of dollars of U.S. goods. The EU says it is prepared to impose a second round of tariffs if needed. The president's proposed tariffs on clothing and footwear imports could lead to significantly higher prices for American families. NPR's Windsor Johnston reports more than 95% of the clothes and shoes sold in the U.S. come from overseas, mainly Asia.
A commonly asked question is why companies don't simply move manufacturing back to the United States. The answer often comes down to the cost of labor. Manufacturing clothing and footwear is labor-intensive, and American workers are paid much more than their counterparts overseas. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average hourly wage for a U.S. apparel worker is between $17 and $20. That's compared to just $1 to $3 in countries like China, Vietnam, and Bangladesh. As a result, many brands rely on overseas factories to keep prices down. The Trump administration's proposed tariffs could upend that balance, forcing companies to either eat the cost or pass it on to consumers. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
The acting commissioner of the IRS is stepping down. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the move comes after the agency agreed to share private taxpayer data with federal immigration officials.
Melanie Krause is the third IRS leader to quit the tax collection agency since President Trump took office. News of her departure comes shortly after the Treasury Department agreed to allow immigration officials to use some taxpayer data in their search for people who are in the country illegally. IRS data has traditionally been closely guarded, even from other government agencies. Critics say the new agreement likely violates data privacy laws and may discourage immigrants without legal status from filing tax returns. A Treasury spokesperson says the Trump administration is, quote, breaking down data silos, adding that sharing taxpayer information will help to identify waste and fraud and make for a safer country. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
You're listening to NPR News.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu speaking out about City Councilor Tanya Fernandez Anderson's resignation following her guilty plea for corruption charges. Speaking to reporters outside Boston City Hall, Wu said she called for Fernandez Anderson's resignation months ago in the wake of the charges.
It's unfortunate what has happened, and it seems that there's been some sense of justice reached here. Residents of District 7 and across the city rightly should have representation, and public officials rightly should be held to a high standard.
Fernandez Anderson says the exact date of her departure will be decided with her district's advisory council to ensure constituents' needs are met during the transition. It's possible, though, she may step down today. A majority of Cambridge City Council members now want embattled councilor member Paul Toner to resign. Councilors Patty Nolan and Burhan Azim issued a joint statement late yesterday calling on Toner to step down. Joining their colleagues, Toner is up against intense criticism from the councilors, as well as Cambridge residents, after he was charged with paying a sex worker for her services in March. According to a police report, Toner allegedly utilized services at a high-end brothel network more than a dozen times back into 2023. In their statement, Nolan and Azim acknowledged the mounting pressure on Toner to resign from residents as well as elected officials. 32 degrees in Boston right now, mostly sunny, upper 40s today. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations.
Other contributors include Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on Thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com. And from the Doris Duke Foundation.
He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Yeagan. Welcome to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Thank you. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Hey, Jim.
Hey there.
Oh, I forgot to mention.
You did.
Diana DiZoglio, the auditor, is going to be here about 1:30. She's going to take our questions and yours. You remember Diana is trying to audit the legislature, and she's going to give us the latest on her efforts to do just that.
May I correct what you said? She is not trying to audit the legislature.
The voters. That is correct.
Passed a law saying
overwhelming
that she should audit the legislature, and they're somewhat resistant. And the governor is going to be with us on April 25th. You know, yesterday we opened the lines to hear from listeners about the local impacts of tariffs on their wallets, whether to cancel plans for a home renovation project because of the expected rise in the cost of building materials, or if they're rushing out to buy a car, an iPhone, stacks of toilet paper, COVID-style hoarding. But one long-term economic indicator is also on the rise. And by the way, all this data I'm about to give you is pre-tariff.
Yeah.
A recent study found that raising a child in Massachusetts costs almost double the national average. It's the single most expensive state in the country to do that. Over the first 17 years of your kid's life, Massachusetts parents can be expected to shell out, somewhere in the neighborhood of roughly $500,000, according to a study late last year put out by Smart Asset. And by the way, New Hampshire and Rhode Island are very close behind. One of them, I can't remember which. Yes, I can. New Hampshire is number 7 most expensive, and Rhode Island is number 9 most expensive. Cost of childcare, education, housing, transportation, they all add up. And obviously, there are other concerns, political concerns, environmental concerns. So the phone and text lines are open at 877-301-8970. Are you putting off having a kid, or have you decided to forego having kids altogether? Or if you have one or are planning on having ones, how have you figured this all out? And by the way, if you're undecided, if you're not in either category, about procreating, maybe you should do it as an act of communal good. Remember we mentioned this? Trump's Secretary of Transportation said federal funding for transportation will be dependent in part on marriage and birth rates,
That's right.
whatever that means. 877.
You want to fix the tea? You better get to work, Jim.
301-8970. The rough average cost per kid, I was stunned by this in Massachusetts, is somewhere in the neighborhood of $35,000 a year per child.
Well,
it's unbelievable.
You know what's also very interesting, too, and one of the reasons, is, and besides money, and money isn't the number one reason, is a lot of people look at parenting as too daunting. They feel it would be overwhelming for them. And you read all these stories about the way we parent now and the way we parented, like in the, certainly after World War II, right through to maybe, 1990 or 2000. Parents have to, most of the time, everybody has to work now to afford. But despite the fact that having 2 full-time jobs, parents spend more time with their kids now than they did certainly when I was a kid, or right through the 90s, where you basically threw the kids out and said, come back home when the street lights come on, or you were just less involved, or you were able to afford to have one parent at home. So I think that's a big deal. You not only have to work all day long, but you're expected to spend all this time with your kids because you can't let your kids out to play.
Yeah, can we get back to the economics for a second? I know people know this, but it bears mentioning. How many Western nations in the world don't have paid parental leave?
We're the only one.
We are the only Western nation in the world
Tell me about
that
Turkey.
does not have paid parental leave. What was the Turkey statistic?
Turkey,
was that a child
they were
care
talking
number?
about all these countries that give aid to their families, that whether it's pay parental leave or help with child care, that do things for their children. We are the only people worse than us of the 40th richest
in terms of
countries
government support.
Is Turkey. Yeah, that's pretty pathetic. But, it's interesting how, not to dump on the Republicans right away, but it is the Republicans that have fought all these efforts for subsidizing child care, parental leave, the kind of things that would make it easier to have children in the United States of America. As Barney Frank used to say, they're very pro-childhood from conception to birth. and then you're on your own.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
877-301-8970. Joe from Lynn texts and says, I'm 28 years old, getting to the prime age for becoming a parent. You would have to be insane to start a family here, and I live in Lynn. It isn't something I'd even remotely consider. In fairness, one thing that Governor Healy talks about nonstop is affordability. That's why she did that $1 billion in tax cuts. And have you heard her commercials on the air? Because it's tax filing season? No, I don't know. They're good or bad. They're informational. The legislature and Healy's request increased the child tax credit in Massachusetts to somewhere like $440 per kid. It's not a deduction, it's a credit, so it's worth more. And the other thing they did, to their credit and her credit, is there used to be a 2-child limit on how many tax credits you get for the number of kids you have. Now you get 440 no matter how many kids you have. Obviously, it doesn't offset the huge expenditure, but it's a hell of a lot more than existed before. And according to her, I don't know if this is true, it's the most generous child tax credit in any state in America. 877-301-8970. What are you laughing about?
Well, 2 things. Here's one. I will never have children. I can't even afford to go out on a date. That's one. And then here's the other one, and I'm going to push back on this one, as we say in the news biz.
I hate that expression.
I hate that expression, too. I don't know why I said it.
I don't know why you said it.
People should take care of their own kids, drive a less expensive car, and not go to the Caribbean twice a year. To that texter, I got to ask you what world you're living in. If you know people who are young in Massachusetts in their 20s and 30s trying to start a family, they're not going to the Caribbean, and they don't have snazzy cars, and they can't afford not to have some kind of child care because they can't afford the rent if they don't have 2 jobs going. So I really think you're living in another kind of world from what I've seen.
Well, that was a pushback, Marjorie.
It was a pushback, Jim.
You pushed back.
I had to do it.
I had to do it. Someone had to do it. Marjorie was the one to do it.
I stepped up to the plate.
No, you do. I wouldn't go that far. I hate that expression, too. 877-301-8970. Okay, so you're thinking of having a kid. How old were you when you had your first kid?
30.
Okay, so let's assume you're 30 today.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking of having your first kid. You consider the finances, the $35,000 a year roughly.
Yeah.
And you probably know that Trump's president, right? You know that Trump is
I
president.
do know that, yeah.
And he's not doing terribly well on things like civil rights, women, people of color, that sort of thing. Does that factor into your decision making?
Well, lots of people, you hear this all the time. I don't want to bring children into a world like this. But I've been hearing that since I was a little girl. People are worried about
Never
the
lived
nukes.
through anything like this.
Well, this is a little different. It's a self-inflicted attack on the country, which seems odd, but that's what we're going through. But I think that's part of it, too. Money's a huge thing, and I think that the fact that everybody needs a wife, Jim, and the problem is there are almost no wives now because everybody's got to work.
Well, but did you write, speaking of that, and we'll get through calls in a minute, 877-301-8970, were you the one that wrote this as a columnist, or did you always quote people saying one of the reasons why women chief executives have such a much harder time than male chief executives through history is they don't have wives.
Right, exactly.
I mean, not literally, at least figuratively they don't have one.
Yeah.
Maybe literally they don't have one either.
If you were some big deal CEO, you had the little wife at home who was preparing the social life and organizing all the kids' activities and organizing the dinners and organizing all those things. And what's really interesting in this Pew Research study? 57% of men say they want kids. These are people between 18 and 24. Only 45% of women do. So more men want kids than women do, because even though men do a lot more now, I think a lot of young men are doing half or almost close to half. The burdens still, I think, fall on the women. We see this all the time in politics, where the husband that does the political guy that does all these things with the kids is seen as the greatest dad since Leave It to Beaver or something, and the mother is looked at as someone who isn't paying enough attention to her job.
How many male politicians have been holding their baby at the beginning of a segment, like Mayor Wu did the first few months?
I know.
And by the way, her husband handed her a kid immediately after the segment was over yesterday.
But as she will say, the reason she has the ability to be the mayor of Boston with 3 kids is because her husband has taken a leave from his career to take care of the kids. That's very unusual, too.
Okay,
anyway, let's go to Luke. Can we start now with the calls?
Sure.
Luke in Maine. Thank you for calling.
Hi, Luke in Maine.
Hey, how you guys doing? Been a Democrat most of my life, lived in Massachusetts, moved to Florida, now back to Maine, Republican now. But I am just shocked at what you had said earlier about after conception, you're they're on your own. My parents are from England and New Zealand, and they had everything taken care of for them, as much as the government could. and I just find it shocking that this country doesn't do anything. It's so much that I'm 43 years old, and if I even find somebody who wants to have kids, I'm basically going to be in the grave when my kid graduates high school. It's not even a point anymore.
Well, Luke, I mean, it is true. I mean, we child care, we don't do any better job on child care than we did when I had my first kid, which was, like I said, when I was 30, and that was a long time ago. We
don't have health care either, so yeah. You make a valid point.
Yeah, we don't get that. We don't get that support, and it is. I mean, Elizabeth Warren ran on you would not have to pay more than 7% of your salary for child care.
Didn't Biden adopt that too? It just never went anywhere.
Never went anywhere, which I thought was a great idea. I thought that could propel her into the White House. How wrong I was about that.
By the way, Luke, thanks for the call. Speaking of Biden, do you remember, of course you remember, that the child tax credit that was increased reduced the poverty rate in this country by 50%. And so what did Congress do with it?
Took it away.
Got rid of it. By the way, in all fairness, while all the Republicans were against it, it was Joe Manchin who was the responsible player that turned the tide there. Ian and Lowell, I mean, these are serious emails. I hope we don't make light of this. My wife and I are in our mid-30s. We have a 3-year-old. We want a second one. But we've had to seriously debate the feasibility of it in light of the tumultuous financial situation Trump has thrown the world into. The extra funding for roads, though, is a real tempting incentive. Thank you. And Eddie in Wakefield and an anonymous texter is saying, is there any saying that Jim doesn't hate? Is there any saying that Jim likes? I just don't like those couple of sayings. Yeah. And I often say like, you know what expression I hate? Deep dive.
Deep dive.
And I say deep dive at least once a week, and I can't stop myself.
These are sort of reporter things. You know, reporters say that when they're asking questions in an interview. Let me push back on that a bit. Let's take a deep dive into that. So I'm imitating in a bad way my fellow reporters.
You know what my attitude is? It isn't I know this is not our topic, about pushing back.
Pushing back.
There's some people on the radio in this town who shall remain unnamed who constantly say, I need to push back on that. And my response to that particular person is, just push back on it. You don't have to announce that you're pushing back. Push back.
Just do a sneak.
Do it.
A sneak one, Jim. A sneak pushback.
877-301-8970. So what we're talking about is this survey that says the single most expensive state in America to raise a child is Massachusetts. As I said a minute ago, I was shocked by this. New Hampshire is the 7th most expensive, roughly $28,000 a year.
Yep.
Rhode Island, 9th most expensive, just short of $28,000 a year, which is an immense amount of money.
Housing is a big cost, of course.
Housing is a huge cost.
Kate in the car, thank you for calling.
Hey, Kate.
Yes, hi. Thanks. I appreciate this topic, and I feel like for young adults that are making these big decisions, there's not enough support to get them to feel comfortable and encourage them to start families when they're young. And I think that this conversation is an example of that. You know, I'm 51. I have 4 kids. I have a really great career, and being a mother is so much more important and is so much more joy brought to my life compared to my career. And I was 27 when I had my first. A lot of these women, like you just said, 43% of women want children now. When they decide that it's too late, you're going to see an increase in depression, loneliness. I just think it's the wrong message to be sending these young adults. They should be having kids when they're young, you just have to even figure it out. Move out of this state. It's expensive to live here.
Yeah.
Hey, Kate, we have a bad connection at the end here.
Yeah.
Thank you for your thoughts. We appreciate it.
Well, you know, I don't want to dump on people that don't have children. I know a lot of people who never had children are living wonderful lives and doing wonderful things. I mean, it's an individual kind of decision. And one of the reasons I think women wait later to have children is they need to establish themselves in their career. It's very hard to start your career when you've got a baby or 2 babies
or to leave midway and
I guess
the ground.
The texters are complaining that I'm moving around too much. I'm sorry. I can't stop.
It is what it is.
Can't stop.
I hate that expression too, actually.
I move around a lot.
I don't like that expression either. 877-301-8970.
You know why I move around a lot?
No, I don't
From
care
having 3 children. You know, when you have 3 children, you have to move back and forth with the kid.
Does it make you happy moving around?
I'm explaining the thing the hangover. You know, when you have a baby in your arms, you want to keep the kid moving.
Yeah.
So I just have never stopped.
Yeah. Your youngest kid is like 35.
Well, I have 2 grandchildren now.
Okay. Oh, that's right.
And let me tell you something.
Yeah, they're moving.
Well, I just want to say, that's why you have kids when you're young, because, boy,
it's a little harder.
15 minutes over there at that house, and I'm like exhausted. I'm on the couch.
I know what you mean. By the way, I don't know if we did these statistics, too, which I find interesting, and if Marjorie mentioned them, I apologize.
What?
22% of adults are kid-free in this country. Is that number surprise you? Or maybe not. I was going to say it sounds high, but of course some people plan to have them and haven't had them yet. But according to Pew people, this you may have said, of those adults under 50 who don't have children, roughly 50% of them intend to never have children. So there you go. Obviously, that's really impressive to Marjorie.
Very impressive.
An anonymous texter has a very good point you should have thought of, Marjorie. If Trump were to waive his birthday military parade, the $100 million savings would pay for national child care.
Oh, yeah.
It actually wouldn't, but it would be a good start.
You know one of the best lines about the military parade, though?
Yeah.
Is John King from CNN said
What did he
yesterday,
say?
all that heavy equipment, they're going to crash all the bridges of the Potomac, which are not in great shape. They can't bear the weight of that military equipment.
You don't think he can do that, right?
You know, I mean, he loves Vladimir Putin. No tariffs on Russia, and Vladimir Putin has those big military parades all the time. So maybe he wants to be like his guy.
I think that is exactly what it is.
Yeah,
I think there's jealousy there. I think so.
Okay, we're talking about having children in the United States of America today, the cost of it, the growing concern about whether it is worth it to have kids. You're listening to 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
An intrepid reporter for National Geographic has been exploring the world on foot. The years-long journey has taken him to some faraway places, some many miles away from other people.
Having a mobile phone, even if you're pushing camels around the Rift Valley of Africa, is mighty handy.
Walking across planet Earth to some surprising places. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Safety Insurance, offering a variety of home insurance products to cover your home's increased value. You can ask an independent agent about safety insurance. Safety Insurance. We'll help you manage life's storms. And McLean Middleton. For over 100 years, McLean Middleton has been dedicated to serving its clients and its community, offering guidance through the complexities of today's legal system, with locations in Woburn and Boston. McLean.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan, Jim Browdy, live at the library. Streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Diana DiZoglio is going to be here at 1:30, the auditor, to discuss a bunch of things, including you-know-what, question 1, which passed by a mere 71%, but the legislature doesn't like it, so it hasn't happened yet. Governor's here on the 25th of April. Just sitting in, we're talking about the rising cost of having a family. Most expensive state in the country to raise a kid to 17 is Massachusetts, roughly $35,000 a year. And we're talking about that. Now, by the way, I mistakenly said before I don't like an expression that Marjorie used. And then I mentioned I don't like some expressions that I use. And then anonymous texter says, Jim, what do you think about the saying, there's a lot to unpack here?
Oh, that's another one.
That drives me nuts.
Yeah.
And another anonymous texter says, with all due respect, Jim, you often say, I hate that expression, but, and then I proceed to use the expression.
Well, I do the same thing.
Not done.
Okay, not done.
Anonymous texter,
Yeah.
Marjorie, I like your dancing
There you
around.
go, there you go.
Big energy,
There you go.
Marge,
Yeah.
pushing back.
Yeah, I have a moving problem.
Pushing back.
I've been told that before.
Who cares? I mean, if it makes you, does it make you happy?
When I used to do television, that was people complaining all
Well, that's
all
why
the
you
time.
sit down
Stop moving.
Yeah.
Well, you can move in your seat, Jim.
You can.
Anyway, this is a very interesting point.
What is it?
My husband and I have jobs where we can work from home. We are with our kids all the time. My mom lives with us, provides childcare. People need to embrace a multi-generational household. Grandparents are so important in a kid's life. And that is one of the big things that's changed because we move around a lot. You know, when people stayed in their hometown, moved in their hometown, where I grew up, a lot of people lived in triple deckers, grandparents on the top floor, you know, kids in the middle floor, the parents downstairs. You had help from your parents. And so many people I know, and certainly in my kids' generation, that they move near their families once they have kids, so that they can exhaust the grandparents.
Well, your kid just moved home a year
That's
or
right.
so ago.
I've never been so popular.
Becky from Air has a great text. We can't stop having kids until all the Trump supporters stop having kids.
That's right.
We have to counter all the little Trumpsters out there.
Yeah.
Well, that's a dilemma.
Yeah, and there's also the issue of not supplying enough people to keep the country going in terms of...
Well, we don't. The birth rate is was it 1.6?
1.6.
And it needs to be at least 2.1 or something to sustain the population.
That's right. And many people have pointed out that that's one of the downsides of people that can't stand immigrants in the country. Well, a lot of immigrants are young and ready to have kids.
Yeah, exactly. 877-301-8970. Stop giving the number, Jim. Ann in Shrewsbury, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, Ann.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, same to you.
So just a quick thing. I have 3 children, 2 of whom have decided not to have children.
Wow.
And it's not even so much the current situation, which is horrible enough, but they've been on the climate change path for a while.
Yeah.
And they just feel like, what are we leaving to kids?
Can I tell you, we should have emphasized that more. I'm glad you said that. A lot of people are saying they're concerned about the climate is huge. And the good news is, is Trump signed executive orders expanding coal production yesterday. So is that going to make your kids happier there, Ann?
Oh, man, my kids. And, well, here's the thing. My 3rd kid is going to move back to Massachusetts when she has kids from Tennessee because she'd never raise her kids in a red state, no matter how expensive it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about that, by the way, before you go? How do you feel? Obviously, I assume you respect their decision, but how does it feel that 2 or 3 kids made that decision?
I think it's a very sad world that they had to make that decision. But I also understand it. I mean, I'm not sure if I were 25 years old, 30 years old, I'd be, raising kids again.
Excellent call, and thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. We appreciate it.
877-301-8970 is the number of people who are wondering, Jim, if this is a segment about having children or about all the phrases that you don't like.
No, the issue is not the phrases I don't like. The issue is if you don't like certain phrases, why do you use them? And I don't know the answer to that. We can have that discussion maybe later in the week or next week or some such thing.
Since the government is getting rid of birth control soon, women will be having more pregnancies.
But it is really hard. If someone makes a decision, and internal is not the right word, but you'll know what I mean. If someone makes a decision they don't have a kid, I totally respect that. If they decide, I just want to live a different kind of life.
Trenny talks about it all the time.
Yeah, she does.
She talks about not having children, that she and her husband have decided they want to travel, they want to live a different kind of life and not bring children into the world. They both work very hard at their jobs.
Right, and the point I was trying to make is that, I assume, is not only perfectly fine, and whether it's fine with you or not, it's obviously their decision. But when people are making decisions that they otherwise might not make because of external factors, whether it's the environment, the horrible political environment, the out-of-control costs that individual families shouldn't have to bear on their own, that's really painful kind of stuff.
Listen to this one. My son just told me most of his friends aged 25 to 30 are weighing whether to buy a house or have a child. I mean,
most of his friends, did you say, who aged 25 to 30?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's really horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. And by the way, I don't think people, last thing let me say about this, I don't think we reflect enough on the things that you and I mentioned a few minutes ago, that we're the only Western nation without paid parental leave. We're the only Western nation without universal health care. It's sort of like a mantra. You just say it and you move on. It's a scandal. I mean, it's just a total scandal.
We're suckers. I've always thought that. And I said, well, we pretend, we're really tough and we're macho and all that. I think we're real suckers. Why don't we demand this? That every other country on earth can afford this except for us, and we're the richest country on earth? Yeah. It's just ridiculous.
Well, it's about affording.
It's about
an ideology.
I hate to dump on the Republicans, but it's Republicans. I mean, the idea is, if you have your kids, you take care of them, sweetheart. That's basically their attitude, and that's part of the reason nothing has changed in child care. As a matter of fact, one of these stories talks about the cost of child care has increased over 200% or something crazy. Yeah, here it is. U.S. parenthood has gotten even more expensive the last couple of decades. Daycare and preschool prices spiked by about 263% between 1991 and 2024, according to analysis by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I mean, it's just nuts. And by the way, if you can't afford to have a mother or a parent or family member, somebody to help you out at least 1 or 2 days a week, what you're paying every week for childcare is just astronomical, which is another reason why people end up putting their kids in one home with many children being watched, and sometimes bad things happen. Harmony from Rhode Island, thank you for calling.
Hi, Harmony.
Hi, how are you? Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
Hi, Harmony.
I love the show.
Thanks.
So, yeah, I live in Rhode Island. I'm originally from Massachusetts. I moved here because it was cheaper. I'm a single mother. I had my daughter late. I was 33. And it is extremely difficult to be a single mother in this economy, trying to provide. My daughter has special needs. I remember not too long ago seeing an interview with J.D. Vance where he was like, maybe you should supplement childcare with, having your child stay with your grandparents or whatever. But not everybody has that. My mom passed away when my daughter was 8 months. My father lives far away. It's just not viable for some people.
That annoyed me so much when he said that. I mean, how ignorant a remark was that? But you know something, Harmony? I don't know what's going to happen with Trump and the cuts, but I would say Massachusetts is a much better place for special needs kids in the schools than Rhode Island, from what I
Even though we're getting
understand.
sued by the feds because of how we're treated. Did you read that story out of Northampton
yes,
the other day?
It may all change, but generally speaking, I think the schools do a much better job here because they have more money.
Harmony, we appreciate your sharing your story with us. Thank you very much for the call. 877-301-8970.
Richard Grafton says, I have a 7 and 10-year-old, 2 boys. I'd be happy to lease them out to any couple who wishes a trial run.
Let's take 1 or 2 more calls. Chad in Pennsylvania, welcome to the show, Chad. Hi.
Hey, Jim and Marjorie, how are you guys doing?
Fine, thank you.
So my wife and I were living in Salem, Massachusetts when we had our first kid. And for a variety of reasons, largely related to cost of living, we moved to Pennsylvania. And I was shocked at just how much more affordable daycare was in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the sole reason that we moved. It was a huge reason, but I've got to be honest, we're probably done at one because it's so expensive.
Chad, did the salaries keep up when you moved to Pennsylvania?
I'm a wedding videographer. I kind of work all over the Northeast, so I was able to keep my current job. My wife and I both work from home, so we're pretty flexible. Where we live wasn't as much of a concern, but yeah.
Yeah, the best thing you can do is have a Boston salary or a New York City salary or a Washington D salary, and then move to Tennessee. Not that I necessarily want to live in Tennessee, but you'd be getting. I know someone that lives in Memphis with a New York City salary, and she's doing great.
I know that person too. Chad, thank you very much for your call. We appreciate it.
It's Tennessee.
I just realized also, what's also going to add to the cost, not to make a horrible story worse? Didn't Trump announce yesterday, or maybe the day before,
pharmaceuticals?
We're going to tariff medicines too, pharmaceuticals that come from other countries.
That's right.
Which is the only way a lot of people find them to be affordable. They're going to be tariffed too.
And apparently, I didn't know this until I read this morning, that India supplies nearly half of all generic drugs, and people buy generic drugs because they're cheaper. But he's put huge tariffs on India, so the cost even of generics are going to go up. Because
there's going to be a consequence of that. Because you know what? I believe the primary source of manufacture of maybe the most important drug to men in the history of the world, Viagra.
Does Viagra
I think it's
come from India?
I think it's a huge Indian thing.
Then let me just say they'll probably reverse that one, Jim. They'll make an exception for Viagra because, we have a lot of older men in Congress and, they got to do what they got to do. You know what I mean?
We have an older man in the White House too,
We do, but I don't know if he's
79 on June 14th.
Yeah, he's 79. I don't.
Not yet, June 14th.
I mean, maybe he's importing other women, but I don't think Melania is running to the Trump boudoir every night.
Fine.
Do you think?
Okay, well, I think that's
not
our
think
business.
So.
That's their business, I believe, Marjorie.
Doesn't she live in another state?
Oh, my God.
Hasn't she moved? Is she still in New York? She was in another town.
She was late to move to Washington.
During Trump
But that really is their business. Would you agree that's their business?
Listen,
no?
With what he's doing to the country, I don't feel bad at all about wondering what Melania would want to.
Why don't you wonder a little more then? Go ahead, tell us some more.
50 yards of Donald Trump.
Well, what we were told by a very high-level producer at CNN several years ago is the first term she refused, and this has actually been written about subsequently, so I'm not being quite as gossipy as Marjorie, that she only agreed to move after he agreed to renegotiate their prenup.
That's right.
Yeah.
She's no fool. And she was living with her parents for most of that time.
She was?
She and Barron, yeah. He was a single guy in the White House.
Okay, we're done with this
we're
for
done
now.
with that. We've analyzed the Trump marriage there. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library, and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. After a quick break, we're going to talk with GBH Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen. We're going to hear about the local Elliot Norton Awards for great local arts and theater. And we're also going to talk about Yoko Ono, the widow of John Lennon. Is she finally getting some grace and some kudos? That's next.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, writer Amor Tolls. His latest book, titled Table for Two, is divided in two. First, a collection of short stories that all land us in New York. The second half moves us to Los Angeles.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Advocates, the human services provider helping individuals facing mental health, substance use, and other life challenges, is now hiring clinicians. Learn more about their supportive culture and open positions at advocates.org. And the Newman School in the heart of Back Bay, dedicated to being a spirited community for local and global teachers and learners, now enrolling middle school day students and 5-day boarding high school students. NewmanBoston.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan and Jim Browdy live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Auditor DiZoglio will be here at 1:30 to take your questions and ours about you-know-what and some related things. Joined out at the library by GBH Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen, host of The Culture Show, airs daily at 2. And by the way, we also have some semi-breaking news.
We do.
In a few minutes, Jared, who is part of the Boston Theater Critics Association, is going to share with us the nominees list that came out at midnight last night for the 42nd Annual Elliot Norton Awards. Good to see you, Jared.
It's very exciting. Good to see you.
It is exciting,
Why don't we start with that?
Why don't we start with that?
Tell people what the Elliot Norton Awards are and who are the big contenders.
Well, so the easiest explanation is it's Boston's version of the Tony Awards. So this is our annual awards that celebrates the theater community, the Boston Theater Critics Association, of which I'm a member and of which Joyce Haywick is our president, votes
I didn't know she was the president.
Yeah, she's great. I love her on your show.
She's our fierce leader. She is fantastic. So we look at all of the shows that basically end, I believe it's March 30th, so April 1st last year to March 30th. So all of the shows that we've been talking about over the years, that people have gone to see. And we have a big ceremony on June 2nd at 7 p.m. at the Huntington Theater. People can buy tickets, you can participate. It really has become an extraordinary and fun night to see the celebration of theater. We have a big party after.
Oh, nice. Do people get dressed up?
People get very dressed up. People get very excited, and artists, theater people know how to party, so it's really, really fun. But I think the big takeaway from this year is we've talked about the UFOT family cycle, which was this August Wilson-esque cycle of one Nigerian family that will take place over, I think it's 9 plays that we'll see over 2 theater seasons. Well, it's underway now with 2 shows at the Huntington, and they racked up about 18 nominations, including for Mfaniso Odafia, who is the playwright behind all of this. She grew up here in Massachusetts. She has written for television. This is very important to tell her story through decades and decades as we find the lineage through this family move forward. And we have seen this in her play Sojourners and The Grove, and audiences are resonating. I've seen 2 of the productions so far. I'm seeing a third, her Portmanteau at Central Square Theater, which is nominated this weekend. It's been really exciting. So the Huntington did very well. Kristen Chenoweth was here for Queen of Versailles. We've already announced that she has won in the Outstanding Performance Story category for musical for visiting productions. We announced the winners already, but it's just a fun night and a way to celebrate theater.
2 things I'd like to say about this. One, do you know what Marjorie's connection to Elliot Norton is?
I do. I have a sense from the Boston Herald.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, when I was at the Herald, the poor Herald, I had a typewriter, but it had no period and no T. So I would have to write in, that was the days before computers and triplicates, the T's and the period, and obviously that was a lot of writing in. So when Elliot Norton was retiring, we were having a big cake and a party for him, and everybody, vulture-like, is hovering around his typewriter. I managed to get the
How did you
Elliot
get
Norton.
it? What was the answer to that one?
I don't remember. I just remember we were all there, and somehow I walked away. I must have snatched it out of someone's hands or something. But I got the Elliot Norton typewriter, which was a very nice typewriter.
So that was my first point. The second point is the ceremony is going to honor Kathy St. George with the 2025 Elliot Norton Prize for Sustained Excellence. I just wanted to play a little sound. She was with us when we had the cast on from
she was great.
A Man of No Importance, and we asked her to introduce her fellow cast members. Here's a little bit of Kathy St. George. How about if we introduce these damn people before we...
I'm sorry. I'm
Kathy,
so excited.
Can you do that?
Introduce them.
Should I do it with an Irish
Yes,
brogue?
absolutely.
All right, let's do it with an Irish brogue. So to my left, we have Eddie Shields.
Now, Kathy, we want you to do the rest of this as Judy Garland. Can you do that? Is that...
Well, it's really it's marvelous to be here. It's marvelous, really marvelous.
Okay.
That was great. She is really a talented human being.
I am so glad you pointed her out because she has been on our stages for so long.
I know.
Not only our stages, but Broadway stages.
Yeah,
I mean,
she's
she has
great.
done it all, and she can sing, she can dance, she can act. She has won these awards, and this year we're honoring her with the big award. She is so compelling and captivating on stage. Most recently in A Man of No Importance, where one could argue she kind of stole the show with her number.
She did steal the show. She was wonderful.
And she's funny, and she can sing. Obviously, she can do the. I was just struck that she did those. It's not easy to go from one voice and accent to the next in seconds. Maybe only Kathy St. George and Meryl Streep can do it. But offstage, Kathy St. George is just the loveliest person. She's so kind. She's so funny and sweet. So I think we're all especially excited to be honoring her.
Can the
with
public go to
prize.
this thing on June 2nd?
Absolutely. So tickets are available now. And again, it's June 2nd at 7 p.m. at the Huntington Theater.
Great. We're talking to Jared Bowen.
Okay, so tell us about Yoko Ono getting her moment.
Well, this is, I find, really, really fascinating because, especially, I think the age I grew up at, a little bit after the Beatles, and lore had already stuck, which was Yoko Ono was really responsible for the Beatles breaking up because of her relationship with John Lennon and how she saw herself and her independence and how she wanted to steal him away from the group. And people have basically believed this for so long. But now there have been a series of documentaries. There was the Peter Jackson documentary, a new one that's about to be released, and a recent biography which argue that is not at all the case. The reason this band broke up is because they changed, because they got older, because there were artistic differences. There were just different notions of looking at life and solo ambitions, and this is why it all changed. And when you look at footage from this documentary that shows Yoko Ono there, especially in the Peter Jackson documentary, she's part of the recording sessions, but she's basically just sitting there.
It was weird.
People can argue it's weird, but she certainly wasn't interjecting. She wasn't telling them how to do things. She wasn't weighing in with opinions.
Also, they're grown men. I mean, that whole absurdity about her, it's pathetic.
And not only that, as if you aren't reducing her already, but she was somebody who was trying to propel feminism forward ultimately in the 1970s, and she was marginalized for that. How dare you speak up for yourself? How dare you get John Lennon to speak in this regard? John Lennon later acknowledged that he had essentially discredited her as the co-songwriter of Imagine. So with this, all of this new, fresh look at what the circumstances, what the atmosphere of the Beatles was at that time, you realize that this doesn't really all add up. And finally, these myths are being busted, and people are taking a very different look at who she is. And in part because she's had a number of great exhibitions, too, in recent years. So people are valuing, as often happens with artists 30 years later, you realize she was pretty forward and she had a lot to say as an artist, and it's only now that she's getting her due on that front.
And she's 90-something. I have to be honest, I was never crazy about her singing. I hear her art is terrific. And John Parker just told us he has a bunch of her albums, which is not surprising.
And he says he likes them.
Here's a portion of Yoko Ono's song Sisters, Oh Sisters, that first appeared on Lennon and Ono's 1972 album, Sometime in New York City. Here it is. That's not horrible. Now I have since I added two little things, Elliot Norton, can I add two little things here? Sure you can, Jim. Who, when walking by the Dakota many years ago, encountered Yoko Ono and John Lennon and got to shake their hand? Go ahead, who would that be?
I'm guessing you.
That would be me.
Right. That's why he brought it up.
And who was at the one to one-on-one concert. Geraldo Rivera, when he was a real reporter, when he was a kid, did this brilliant reporting and won tons of awards about mental health treatment in a place called Meadow something. Brook, I think, in New York City. It was brilliant, like investigative reporting. And Lennon agreed to do a concert to raise money for Meadowbrook. It is Meadowbrook, I'm pretty sure. And it's at Madison Square Garden. And I remember to this day, the whole place is black. There's no lights anywhere. And all of a sudden, you hear acoustically...
Willowbrook.
Willowbrook, thank you. My apologies.
There's
Willowbrook. You hear Ono and Lennon singing Power to the People a cappella, and all of a sudden the lights come on and they're all dressed in white, and it was one of the most dramatic moments I've ever experienced. It was incredible.
Well, don't you think there was a lot of racial discrimination? She was, an Asian woman. I think that was part of her problem too. The racism
Yeah,
there.
if you look at this time, she was an artist. She was trying to have her own career. She was Asian. She was a woman, and she was among all of these men. She was only ever going to be vilified.
Yep.
So can we celebrate another, well, we didn't celebrate the Beatles. Can we celebrate a band quickly here because we talked so much about the hands-off rally? The band that played and ended brilliantly, I thought, the hands-off rally were the local boys, the Dropkick Murphys. They're really huge and a local treasure kind of thing.
And they have really stepped into it, aware of the consequences of being politically forward right now and what the ramifications are if you step out and you protest against some of what the administration is doing, and yet they have no qualms about this. I think it's really interesting because they've made the distinction that this is about taking on issues and the treatment of people. This is about humanity, and this isn't necessarily partisan politics because they are attacking the actions that are happening here and not necessarily the party, because so many people have said, oh, and we've seen this in Hollywood, we just saw this with the Oscars, if you have a political viewpoint, you need to keep it to yourself because this is a business at the end of the day. You don't want to alienate half of your audience if you're to believe that half of the country voted. I know it didn't quite break down like this, but you don't want to alienate your audience and all that revenue that might show up for your box office by saying something. And the Dropkick Murphys have no problem standing up at a concert, pointing out somebody in a MAGA hat and having this conversation and moving forward, and they were certainly front and center. By the way, I don't know
MAGA hat thing was not at the rally here. It preceded it. And by the way, Casey was very respectful later on, even though he challenged the guy. I think he invited him backstage or did something,
which is lovely because they want to have a conversation because, again, it's talking about the issues and the humanity here rather than putting figures around this, although that did come to the fore. They pointed out recently that they weren't kicked off Twitter or X, as has been argued, that they said they left Twitter before Elon Musk booted them. They had other language, but I'll let people figure out what that is. I won't repeat it.
I'm going to add a little anecdote to every topic. Sure, Jim, why don't you? What was one of the great segments we ever had, Marjorie, speaking of the Dropkicks, on St. Patrick's Day many years ago?
Oh, they came on.
Tim Brennan. Tim
God.
Brennan was there,
was
the
great.
guitarist.
Yeah.
And he came on with who? Our great friend Brian O'Donovan. And they didn't intend. Tim played and Brian sang. And it was just among the most tender, beautiful moments we've ever experienced.
Read this quote that the gang got us.
What's that?
From Casey after the rally.
This is a class war, not a political war. So on BUR, he said this. We're being tricked to fight amongst each other so that the ultra-wealthy can milk us of everything we have.
That's why I loved reading about the conversation with the guy in the MAGA hat that they invited him and had this conversation afterward. And by the way, they're taking their cues from, I think, this great history of music in this country where music was helped to become a protest and address these issues. You think of Baez and Dylan and Harry Belafonte.
Neil Young now.
When he took over the Tonight Show.
Pete Seeger.
Pete Seeger, the Chicks, remember the trouble they got into?
All the gospel music back in the civil rights music.
So
too.
this is the latest tradition. And by the way, they've been recording some of the unrecorded lyrics of Woody Guthrie. So this is all very intentional, and this is part of our cultural and political DNA in this country is to protest through music.
You left the Chipmunks off that list, by the way. They made important contributions. They were really, it's incredible, the issues. But good, thank you. Good for all of...
That was really good.
Thank you.
Can you do it one more time?
I spent a lot of time listening to the Chipmunks.
Guys, can we hear Alvin one more time? Okay, Alvin is one of the Chipmunks.
So it's Marjorie, Kathy St. George, and Meryl Streep.
That's right.
All in the same category.
Okay.
So tell us about Nightside songs.
this is a very different and quite impactful theatrical experience, I would say. They call it a musical experience. So Daniel and Patrick Lazor, who are brothers who grew up here in Massachusetts, I believe in Boylston, but now in New York, and they've won all sorts of great musical theater songwriting prizes. They were commissioned by the ART for their next musical, and it's about illness. And their prompt comes from a Susan Sontag quote, her observation that illness is the night side of life. So Nightside Songs is a show that's playing right now at Hibernian Hall in Roxbury through April 20th. And it's a communal theater experience. And by that I mean you walk into the theater and you take your seat and the actors are already mingling among you. They hand out programs that have the lyrics for some of the songs that they will later invite you to sing along to. And so this is looking at illness. It's really through the prism of one patient who's been diagnosed with cancer, and we work through her illness, the diagnosis, the frustration over bills, the reconciliation of what your life has become, how did the illness happen, what your future holds. But it's told through music. So these are characters singing about their experiences, but then the audience is invited to sing along with those scripts that you've been handed as you walk in, almost like hymnals in a church. And it does feel very meeting house-esque because there are bleacher seats. You walk in, the lights are always full. You're invited to sing or not. Nobody's going to be singled out because we always talk about participatory audience participation. Yeah. You're not put on the spot. I, as a journalist, was there covering and writing that day. I wasn't singing, although I noticed a couple of the cast members were looking at me, why is he not singing along? But there is something magical, I think, that happens when, especially for subject matter that is so difficult and I think is so universal, because who hasn't been touched by catastrophic illness that likely will result in death, to then have the whole audience around you singing along. It can be very tough, it can be incredibly sad, but I think it's also affirming to be part of a community.
Didn't I read that the ART had it in a smaller hall because they thought the subject matter and the way it was treated would be better in a more intimate... Is that right? Did I read that?
It makes perfect sense. And I saw it at the Cambridge Masonic Temple, which is a pretty small space. Now, it's, as I mentioned, it's moved over to Hibernian Hall. But I guess I hadn't considered that, because if it was in the regular Loeb Drama Center at the ART, this would be a very different experience.
I think that was,
You would just be watching something unfold as opposed to feel like you're being part of it.
You know what I loved in this review written in Harvard's magazine, and they talked to Susan Block, this woman that does palliative care, that a lot of the stuff came from. She said, getting people to speak about this lets people play around with it. People who are seriously ill and dying, for them there's this feeling that if I tell my wife how upset I am about my illness, it's going to make her sad and make things worse for her. But then the wife is saying, well, I want to protect my husband from knowing how sad I am. There's this conspiracy of silence about it, and it creates enormous isolation for both people. And I thought that's so true.
And a lot of that is dealt with in this show, because they interviewed people like her, or doctors and patients and other caregivers. We know what the burden is on caregivers who have to be in these situations. And yeah, on top of that, if you're carrying around that silence, or you feel like you can't even be open with your own partner because you're so afraid of the disease and what this means for your future, it changes everything. And I think this will change. I don't want to be so lofty to say it will change you, but I think it really does resonate and has a deep impact.
Okay, so how about It's a Mother Effing Pleasure? Yeah. The name of the play.
What a segue, Jim.
So
well, I mean, it is what's the name of the play? Is.
It is, and we're going careening from this subject matter to also very important, sensitive subject matter, but here dealt with it in satire. So this comes from a group called Flaw Board out of the UK, and they presented this show at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which is where a lot of great innovative theater happens. But it's basically a satire about disability, because this is a disability-led group. I just had one of the actors on the show who is legally blind. And so at the beginning of the show, you get an immediate sense of how this is going to unfold, because this actually is a little bit of audience participation, because they start to choose members of the audience. And if you're deaf or blind or this or that, we're going to describe, we're going to have have captions to have this happen, but we're also going to describe what's happening in the show. But we're also going to bring the lights up. We're also going to bring the lights down if you have sensitivity. So in there trying to address all disabilities, it descends into chaos. But then we move into this story where basically a PR firm, which is known for being disability forward, has stepped in it, and so they decide to tap a gay, brown, blind man to be their blind influencer, and then that goes awry.
Blind influencer.
So as they're trying to address all of these issues, they're bringing great satire, but then it becomes very poignant because as this theater troupe found, as they're trying to craft the most outlandish scenarios, they found out some of them actually existed in the real world. So it's wildly hilarious, wildly outrageous, but then kind of hits you with the reality of the world.
And that's there. Where's that again?
This is at ArtsEmerson, and it's playing through April 13th. And by the way, I have to say, they were on the Culture Show, and we were talking about this. This is a group that you might not see in this country again because of the shutdowns on artists and travel.
Yes.
I asked them about this, and they said it was incredibly intimidating to go to the American Embassy in London to try to get these visas, or the consulate rather, and also explain, well, we're doing a show that's basically DEI and what that means.
Well,
this was before.
Not just DEI, the subject matter, but for the last couple of minutes, we haven't discussed this with you. I don't know why. What's the impact of the fear that many people from other countries have about coming here these days?
Huge.
Whether it's to go to school. So how
They
people
won't.
deal with it? They won't.
They won't. I mean, this is what museums are dealing with when they want to put on shows now, and they want to bring over the artists to speak or to help shape their shows. This is what performing arts organizations, whether it's a theater company or you're an opera company and you want to bring people over here, people are afraid that they'll either be sent back or they'll be detained, of course, or sent elsewhere, won't be able to get out of the country. Organizations don't know that they want to book these shows because if you have your primary artist who can't come to the United States, then you've just lost an entire 2-week program that you may have sold tickets to.
That is brutal.
This is really combusting, especially for companies like ArtsEmerson, which is known for scouring the world for the best theatrical performances.
Well, you know what else, too? We were just talking about the cost of living and how much it costs to have a kid before college. This is going to explode the cost of, well, explode is probably too strong a word, but dramatically increase the cost of college because a lot of the overseas kids are paying full freight, and it helps the American kids and enables their parents to get more scholarships and then to get more scholarship. That is sort of the downside for the budgets of people trying to send their kids to college.
I mean, this is so widespread. Everywhere you look, there are ramifications here. We're going to see it as the Smithsonian develops that argument that only certain works of art can get government funding, otherwise you're completely shut out. All of this is just bubbling. It's going to keep rising until we'll realize in pretty short order that the only issue with arts programming is that it tends to happen a year or two out. So in a couple of years, we're going to see the widespread impact of this. It's going to have a huge impact on the arts industry and the economy of the arts industry.
And the blandness of the productions might really kind of overwhelm.
Well, especially if you're too shy and you realize, I can't take too much risk because I need the funding.
We'll have to go back into Oklahoma
That's
or the Music
another really
Man
good point
and
about
stuff.
self-censorship. We talk about it in journalism, but in
look at the
arts
universities
as well. Yeah. Okay, you're going to come back later and tell us what's on your show because we're out of time.
All right, look forward to it.
Goodbye,
All right, Jared Bowen, thank you very much.
so much.
Jared Bowen, executive arts editor at GBH and host of the Culture Show, which airs every day at 2 o'clock and on Fridays. They're live here at the Boston Public Library. Coming up after a quick break, Harvard national security expert Juliette Kayyem is going to talk about Iran and nuclear issues. Student journalists talking about censorship, asking their bylines be removed for fear of a Trump attack, and Canadian tourists boycotting America, particularly Maine and Cape Cod.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com. Everyone knows the shot heard round the world, but what were the key military technologies in the American colonies' fight for freedom? Find out on Nova, Revolutionary War Weapons, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump's trade war is starting to take a toll on U.S. importers. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the nation's trading partners are pushing back with import taxes of their own.
Double-digit tariffs on goods from dozens of countries kicked in overnight. U.S. importers are now paying 20% more on most things they buy from Europe, 24% more on imports from Japan, and the tax on goods from China now totals more than 100%. China punched back, announcing an extra 50% tariff of its own on U.S. exports. That takes effect tomorrow. The escalating trade war has sparked fears of a worldwide economic slowdown, pushing the price of crude oil to a 4-year low. Investors are also dumping U.S. Treasuries. That's caused a sharp jump in U.S. borrowing costs, which will likely make mortgage rates here even less affordable. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
President Trump predicts his tariffs will be, quote, legendary. At a black-tie GOP dinner last night, Trump said world leaders are essentially acquiescing to his demands for better trade deals for the United States.
They are dying to make a deal. Please, sir, make a deal. I'll do anything. I'll do anything, sir. And then I'll see some rebel Republican, some guy that wants to grandstand, say, I think that Congress should take over negotiations. Let me tell you, you don't negotiate like I negotiate.
Trump at a National Republican Congressional Committee event last night. The family of a 14-year-old Palestinian American child who was killed by Israeli forces in the West Bank last weekend is calling on the U.S. government to investigate what happened. The Israeli military says it killed a person hurling rocks at a highway in what it called a counterterrorism operation. He was the 5th U.S. citizen killed in the West Bank since October 2023, according to the State Department. NPR's Hadil Al-Shalchi has the latest.
14-year-old Amir Rabia was born and raised in New Jersey before his family moved back to their ancestral Palestinian village, Turmusaiya, which has a large population of American citizens. Rabia's father, Muhammad, said his son was picking green olives from a tree with 2 friends when Israeli forces opened fire on them. He said he called the U.S. Embassy when he learned about the shooting, but it took too long to send medical help. Now he's demanding answers from Israel.
He's 14 years old. They call him terrorist. Even if he did something wrong, he's underage. You kill him with 11 shots.
The U.S. State Department confirmed the death of a U.S. citizen in the West Bank and said Israel was investigating it. Hadil Al-Shalchi, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
At last check on Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was down 70 points at 37,574. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The Dow now down 108 points, 108. The Department of Public Health is holding a public hearing tonight in Framingham in response to Metro West Medical Center's plan to close the special care nursery service at Framingham Union Hospital campus. The Metro West Daily News reports that, according to the Mass Nurses Association, which represents about 300 nurses at Framingham Union, former patients, nurses, residents, healthcare providers, and Framingham's mayor will all testify about the plan this evening, which the union says would eliminate a program that serves a population of high-risk moms and premature newborns or babies who need higher levels of care in their community. And officials at North Andover are preparing to lay off or fire a number of school teachers as it retools its budget. According to the Eagle Tribune, the cuts will be proposed at North Andover's town meeting in May. Positions at risk of elimination include 8 elementary school teachers, 1 music teacher, 1 phys ed position, and 1 position in the art department. Meanwhile, the middle school is in line to lose 4 foreign language teachers and 4 classroom teachers, while the high school is set to lose 1 teacher each in science, history, English, and foreign language. It's a lot of teachers. In sports, the temperature at Fenway Park last night, 35 degrees at first pitch, making it the 3rd coldest game in Fenway history. You could say that pitcher Garrett Crochet had a chilly reception at his Fenway debut. Sox lost Sox in Toronto go at it again tonight. It's a 6:45 start. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
Hey, it's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Thank you. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Right around 1:30, we're going to be joined by Diana DiZoglio. She's the state auditor for another edition of Ask the Auditor. And Ask the Governor is going to be April 25th with Maura Healey here, also at the Boston Public Library. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. We're joined now at the desk by national security expert Juliette Kayyem, who I should say was armed with excellent gossip this morning, but unfortunately, we can't share any of it on air. She's also the former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Obama, the faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and a contributing editor at The Atlantic. Hello there, Juliette. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Nice
Contributing writer, not an editor, but yes.
Whatever you are.
Yes, thank you for sharing the gossip that I said don't share.
Yeah.
But
Boy, do they wish I
did
could
exist.
too. Trust me.
I'm good. I'm good for a lot of things, I'll tell you.
So Juliette, many people recall that Barack Obama and John Kerry was very involved in getting a deal with Iran that would have delayed their nuclear weapons program. Trump got rid of it moments after he arrived in Washington the first time around. Now he's trying to renegotiate what Obama already had, or what?
Well, he wants more. To quote Donald Trump, who did not negotiate a deal with the Iranians and vacated the Obama one. They negotiated so badly, and yet he hasn't put anything in place. He didn't put anything in place in his first term. And so since then, because as we're seeing with the tariff wars, the world does not stay still for Trump to figure out what his policy is or the details of it. There's a variety of provisions that are forcing or will compel us to sit down with the Iranians, who appear to want a deal that's very similar to the Obama one. Trump thinks that was a bad deal. He can take it further, but no one knows any of the details. And the pressing time feature on this has to do something with basically a clawback provision that it's expiring. The details are less significant than who's going to negotiate the details, which is none other than Steve Witkoff, who people will remember. He's a real estate tycoon, I think married to one of the daughters. Is this Tiff? I mean, his son is married to one of the daughters. Is the lead on the Ukraine negotiations.
Isn't he the one that kind of fell for everything?
Yes,
Vladimir
and
Putin
Russia
said?
and
praised Putin.
And praised Putin, and the lead on the Middle East. So those are going super well. So let's put him in charge of the Iranians. Neither ceasefire, as you all know, has held.
Wouldn't it be smart to get a good diplomat? I mean, someone that maybe knows how to work his way around?
That would require telling Marco Rubio something, and he appears to be a Secretary of State who knows very little about what's going on.
I mean, why would a real estate developer be negotiating a nuclear deal with Iran?
Because everything is
loyal to Trump.
He's loyal to Trump, and everything is transactional.
Can you explain something to me?
The only way to understand anything is there's no interests. Right? I mean, there's no national interest in any of this stuff. It's all ego or I'm so curious, like how many of these guys got out of the stock market before Monday or before the tariffs were announced. And it's all sort of aggrandizement of their own money. But there's no the United States has an interest. It's to quote J.D. Vance, and people miss this at one stage when he was talking about Greenland. We have to satisfy the president's desires. Like, presidents don't have desires. Countries have interests. And it's the weirdest, obviously we're seeing it now. It's the weirdest thing.
Did you just hear
it's
him
all about ego.
At the top of the news, when he was talking about how he loved how they were going to have to come say, "Oh, whatever you say, sir. Whatever you say, sir."
Kiss
kiss my rear end.
Well, I think he did use I think he said my rear end, or they're on their knees kissing my.
I did not hear that.
Which is so. One of the things, as everyone knows who listens to me, do not believe a word they say until I see a list of 50 countries that have called him. The fact that they're saying 50 countries have called them is, I don't know, maybe a few countries have called. What our understanding is, a few countries have called to determine the meaning of certain things. But from what I can tell, the EU and China, as I point to CNN, the EU and China are not calling.
Yeah,
they have just retaliated.
Yeah.
So,
can we get back to the Iran deal for a second?
Sorry.
Obviously, no, it's fine.
Obviously, he did say kissing my.
You can say ass. You can, if he said
Did
it,
he say ass?
Yeah.
So he said ass.
Okay, so.
So I say ass.
Don't want to think about that.
Obviously, there's an incredible bond between Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, and Trump. And Netanyahu is unalterably opposed to negotiating with Iran. And so, did he announce the Iranian thing with Netanyahu? I think sitting next to him. Yeah. So, how do you explain that?
I mean, it's like it sort of came out of the blue. There's and part of it, I think, is for him to try to figure out a regional approach to what's going on. But just, the warning signs are explicit in that he has put on the table the potential for a military action against Iran. When the press secretary was pushed on it, she basically was like, I mean, they use this term like all hell will break loose. So it's like, who talks like that? That's not a strategy. And so they have put the idea of a military action against Iran on the table, but that's he could do it. At this stage, nothing is off the table. When you look at what's happening with the tariffs, how are they going to distract? Well, the question is it an attack against Greenland? Is it military troops against Yemen? That's my vote for all who want to predict this. Or is it Iran? And those are the sort of three options right now. They are also talking about military action against cartels in Mexico. They have one hammer. Because their negotiations are so bad, they just always revert to a military
unilateral threat. Because President Scheinbaum says, we're not agreeing with this.
Of course.
We don't want this happening here. Can we move on?
Wag the dog.
The
wag the dog.
You were the creator a few years ago of the notorious slogan, pace the rage. Nobody's pacing any rage anymore.
Yeah.
But I try to pick, and I mean this sincerely, the outrage of the day. And I have to say, the other day, one of the worst stories, and it's really hard to rate them, there's 3 USAID workers in Myanmar. Everybody has seen the video. I know it's run by a despot. We all know this. We know there's civil wars there. We know all the bad things that are happening. But you saw these buildings collapse with thousands and thousands of people dying, thousands more under them trying to rescue.
Earthquake.
The United States, earthquake, thank you. There's 3 USAID workers who, while they're in Myanmar, they arrive in Myanmar, they get emails from the United States government saying that they are terminated. And essentially, the more I read, correct me if I'm exaggerating or being unfair, our position about the meager support we are giving to people who are dying and suffering is let our allies do this. Let Europe and other countries. That is what the bottom line is.
That is so. And so they are giving up on the sort of soft power that was part of the USAID mission. Part of it is just a moral authority. We are a country that helps other countries in need, especially ones that don't have the capacity. And are suffering from a harm that's no fault of their own. I mean, this is an earthquake. The number I think is up over 3,000 now. The last number I looked. So what are 3 USAID workers going to do? They're just going to probably help organize. They're not moving rubble, but they're helping with our allies. That vacuum once again, because their theory of the world is we can live without the world can't live without us.
No matter what
that
we do.
Is not true, because the vacuum that's being filled by the Europeans, of course, but more importantly by the Chinese, is significant. You're going to see China's filling the soft power role that we had filled in Africa, in Asia, and now and then the
well,
Far
look at
East
that.
Asia.
Also, China, South Korea, and Japan are talking to each other around the tariffs. They weren't before.
Literally, you could not. You could not write a script that like sort of, Siri, write me the script for how tariff planning could backfire. And then it would be like, the Chinese align with the Japanese and the Koreans to figure out how to protect their Asian markets. It's remarkable. Can I do a shout out for someone quickly?
Of course,
sure.
Yeah.
So I say pace the rage. I'm obviously pacing very fast today. I'm high energy. But I got a lovely email from a Colleen, and she says she listens every week. I'm not going to get, she's a research data analyst or librarian. And she said that she loves the quote line. And she emailed me last night. She goes, but I've changed it to pace our rage, O-U-R, rage. She says, I want to center the shared nature of our civic responsibility and our collective resilience as a community. And I thought that is so nice.
That is so nice.
So pace our rage. So
yeah,
thank you,
I like
Colleen.
that. I like that very much.
Thank you.
We're talking to Juliette Kayyem.
So, Juliette, you wrote a great piece for The Atlantic about what's going on up in Maine, and the Canadians are not coming or there, Cape Cod. Tell us more.
Yeah, so I say prescient only because there was news this morning. So I struggle with how to engage in all these news, but one of the things that I wanted to look at, because you started to see hints of it, CNN did a terrific story on this in Maine alone, was like, what's going to be the totality of consequences on our tourism industry, based both on our economic policies, but more importantly, our immigration policies. We are unwelcoming, no question about it, and the vagaries of how people are entering the country. I heard Jared talk about some concerns about some artists coming here.
Yes.
It's not like people aren't able to come in. Millions of people are coming in. It is that you don't know if you're going to be that one person pulled aside, and there's enough anecdotes, especially in European press. So just we do facts here. 10% of America's GDP is related to the tourism industry. It's defined broadly, but nonetheless, and that's everything from the big hotel chains and airlines to people who have Airbnbs who may be seeing losses, or VRBO, vacation rentals. Maine has seen significant losses already, but the cumulative impact is things like in 1 month, 8% down in German reservations. The whole country, Germans are deciding not to come. Between March last year and March this year, the new data is in on France. I think it's 9%. Overall, it's down in the 20%. I mean, you are talking about significant numbers of people who are looking at their summer plans and saying, really? And you can't disagree with them because they don't know what's going to happen. And you've had a dozen European countries issue travel advisories, are called. They're not warnings. Now, this is in the absence of a terror attack, in the absence of COVID, in the absence of anything horrible happening here. They're just issuing alerts to their population saying, we have no guarantees for you, because it used to work this way. You had a visa or you entered, and now we're hearing about Germans being detained, Brits being detained, and others. So this is going to have a tremendous impact. Look, a global recession is going to have a tremendous impact on our economy, but this will have a specific impact on Cape Cod,
Maine. Also the foreign workers that come here for the summer.
Yeah.
Lots of people have foreign workers. And my kid used to go to a YMCA camp that was full of foreigners.
Yeah, they could get a 10-week visa.
It was great.
It was everyone's happy. And
learn different language,
at some stage, the Globe will do a story on international rentals or hotels on the Cape, and every city is going to be experiencing this because the numbers are undeniable now because we can tell because of airlines. The news today, just to give you a sense, so the 4 major American airlines in January predicted their best year of travel, period. And we call this revenge travel in the field.
Because of COVID?
Because of COVID. Everyone wants to get on the road, as we all do. So we call it revenge travel. They were expecting their best year. They reassessed, so that's January. Last week, before the tariffs were announced, they modified that planning and saying it's probably going to be flatlined or probably a little bit worse. This morning, Delta says we're not making any predictions, period. They literally pulled their planning for public consumption. They're a public company, and said we just can't predict it anymore. Americans won't travel because of the recession that's likely, and foreigners don't want to come here because
they're afraid.
They're afraid.
Yeah. Well, no, also, and they're angry.
They're angry. The Canadians are angry, right? I mean,
can I ask you a related thing? Mayor Wu is with us every month, and whether you like her positions or don't like her positions, I'm not speaking to you, I'm speaking to people in general, she answers most questions very directly, unlike a lot of politicians, and she also answers them quickly. We asked her yesterday what her advice would be to a foreign student who was contemplating studying in the United States, and it was the longest pause I ever heard from Mayor Wu before she answered the question, and it was clear she was thinking big time. What is your answer to that question?
Look, we're trying to recruit at the Kennedy School. A huge proportion are, obviously, stay within your visa status, but that as far as we can tell, I don't want to say these are outliers, but that we would still welcome people, and I would with it. Sure,
yeah, you would welcome people. The United States government welcome people.
I mean, no, but I mean that the process is still pretty transparent, and also they're not being denied the visa, so that they could still come here. Here's where my advice is for my students, and I said this publicly in class, and I will say it here: if you want to matriculate, do not travel abroad until you get your grade back, because we have one more month of classes. So if you want the degree from the Kennedy School or Harvard, my risk assessment, and I said in class, as your mother,
don't go home.
Is don't go home because you can't be guaranteed re-access. The other is if you want to walk during graduation, once again, their risk calculation, but from what we're seeing, some weird thing could happen. You could challenge it in court, whatever you want to do. But just based on your risk calculation, if you want to walk during Harvard's graduation, it is your choice. But my personal risk calculation, if you were my child, is stay in country until you get the degree. If you want to walk, now a lot of kids
walk across the stage.
A lot of kids don't do it. They leave before then because it's graduate school. A lot of people don't do it. But like if you want that honor of picking up your diploma, but if you want the degree, you've got 4 weeks until finals. Stay around.
By the way,
that's not legal advice. That's risk advice. As I said to my students, I'm not giving you legal advice. That's just as a risk assessor, I'm looking at the numbers. That's my risk advice.
As Mayor Wu said herself, if Trump got his way in birthright citizenship, she would not be a citizen because her parents were immigrants and she was born here.
Yeah.
So one last thing about
they were not U.S. citizens when she was born. Then that's amazing.
Your whole thing about your risk assessment advice, whatever it is. I think we read in the Globe. I'm not sure we read this morning, that I was under the mistaken assumption that virtually every student who had a visa who's been snatched by the feds were snatched because they made a pro-Palestinian comment, wrote an op-ed in the case of Ozturk over there at Tufts.
No.
Or we know what the situation is with Khalil out of Colombia. But they say the majority not only were not because they didn't allegedly make any pro-Palestinian comments, but they won't disclose what the basis is in the colleges. Don't even. So how
might have been a traffic infraction.
So to me, that's even scarier.
Yeah, the colleges have lists of all the students who are, or the universities have lists of all the students who are on visas. And my understanding is they are getting notified, or they are seeing that a visa has been pulled.
They're not being notified.
They're not. The school is not being notified, right? And so then they learn that the students. Status is different. It puts the university in a difficult position because you know it. But we're hearing. I mean, the Globe reported today that these students are being told that the expectation that they had that the student visa would last till the end of the semester or until whenever they matriculate is over. And that could just happen to anyone. I mean, that could just happen to and if you think about, it's not just Harvard. You think about this, with its endowment, it can handle changes in enrollment. if you think of the smaller colleges, which are, benefiting and being benefited by the presence of international students in a world that is global, it could very much impact them because they don't have the resources to fight.
Can we add something to this that we didn't expect? So we've been asking everybody with a Harvard connection, starting with Khalil Gibran Muhammad, Fiona Hill the other day. She's actually quoted from our show.
Mayor Wu?
What she said, right, Mayor Wu also in
What
the
did she
Globe.
say? I just saw her yesterday.
Fiona Hill was on our show 2 days ago, and she's on the board of, what are they called? The
Board of Overseers? No,
the Overseers. Board of Overseers.
Yeah,
It's not the corporation which runs Harvard. Board of Overseers. And what she said to us, which is what's in the Globe, we couldn't agree more, is what's most important is collective action.
Yeah.
Don't have people out there by themselves. We were told by Jeffrey Sonnenfeld that there was a big meeting of 50 university leaders this week, and we don't know if it happened.
Princeton's standing tall.
Princeton is interesting.
And so the point of today's piece in the Boston Globe was virtually everybody is urging Harvard to
take
fight,
the lead.
to stand, and in the words of Hill, join with other universities. Is any of this happening?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there's definitely. I would not view Harvard's early steps as being the strategy. And so what I would and no one's asked my advice, so I'm going to give it publicly, and maybe someone will listen. There's in a crisis, which Harvard is in, or higher education is in, there's many fronts. There's the legal front, there's the political front, there's the economic front, whatever. So far, the president of the university has owned the legal front. And so all of his language is very legalese, whatever. I'm of the school is have someone else do that. We have lawyers, we have general counsels, we have other people, and he leads the overall front. I think he's gotten I'm a friend with his, and I understood what his letter was about. He was buying time, and he didn't want to get too political. But I'm not sure, we've seen with Columbia that buying time only goes so far. At some stage, you're going to have a reckoning, and we want to be in the best position for that reckoning. I believe I know Harvard and a lot of smart people are thinking about that moment when they call it. But one small thing they can do, so you're not making everyone annoyed at this letter that came out that seemed very legalese and didn't really defend Harvard's equities. As I said on an earlier show, what you could do is think of a bifurcated response in which you have the lawyers running what's clearly a legal challenge, Title VI, let them have all the language, do whatever, and you have the president of the university that can do this for all other universities.
I couldn't pick
herald
that.
it.
If that guy the president of Harvard was sitting in the audience, I could not even pick him out.
Yeah.
I know his name.
Alan,
to keep a profile like that when you run the most powerful, wealthiest university in the world, and to quote Marjorie Egan and Larry Summers both, if Harvard can't stand up to Trump, then who can?
But I will say this: the idea that strategy has been disclosed. I'm not defending my institution, but there's just too many meetings, too many things that people are hearing and stuff. The idea that that's the final salvo is not true. But as they position themselves for what is going to be Harvard's response, not just for Harvard, but for higher education and defending higher education, because we see what this looks like. Like the idea,
they got to move it. There has to be a sense of urgency here.
What is the
Columbia's
standard
getting screwed anyway.
Yeah, they didn't get their money back. But what's the standard of success, right, for Harvard? Think about what is our goal, and our goal cannot be just defense, and but I think that's
the goal
being
is going to be to stand up and show some courage.
Right.
Isn't that the goal?
But you can't. I'm defending my institution in this regard. There are court cases. You have to defend the school's equities in those court cases. I just don't know why they have the president of the university out in front on the legal case. That's my argument.
Because he doesn't want to come out on the political case.
That's your argument.
That is my argument. Nice to see you, Juliette.
Bye, everyone.
Juliette. Thank you very much.
Who haven't I gotten annoyed today? I was like, I went after everyone. Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Bye.
We have been speaking with Juliette Kayyem, former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Barack Obama, Faculty Chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and a contributing writer at The Atlantic, where she has a great piece about foreign tourists abandoning us, either because they're afraid or because they're ticked off. Coming up after a quick break, in case you forgot, Jim, Passover starts this weekend. We'll kick things off a bit early with two local Jewish institutions, Mamaleh and Lehrhaus. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library, and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
On the hit medical drama The Pit, actress Taylor Dearden is being celebrated for her portrayal of a talented young emergency room doctor who, like Dearden, is neurodivergent.
Recognizing that something's hard for anyone and then being able to overcome it if you are neurodivergent, hopefully that should just make it even sweeter.
I'm Elsa Chang. How The Pit portrays neurodivergence and gets it right. On All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and Dover Rug and Home. Rugs and carpeting for today's lifestyle with in-home rug trial and design consultation. Dover Rug in Natick, Boston, Burlington, and online at doverrug.com. Dover Rug, rugs and the people who know them. And Revision Energy, a solar company and a Mitsubishi Electric heating and air conditioning contractor, offering customers the option to combine a solar array with a heat pump system to manage their heating and cooling at home. RevisionEnergy.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Regan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. In about an hour today, the auditor, Diana DiZoglio, obviously the author of Question 1 about auditing the legislature, will be here to answer your questions and ours. And on the 25th of April, the governor will be here for an hour for Obviously Ask the Governor. Passover starts this weekend, a celebration of the Israelites' liberation from Egypt and a chance to stuff yourself with matzo ball soup, charoset, wine, etc. Here to celebrate with us are three big players in Boston's Jewish food scene. Rachel Miller-Munzer and Rachel Sundet are here. They're the co-founders of Mamaleh's Delicatessen, with locations across Boston, Cambridge, and Brookline. Rachel's, it's great to see you both. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for
and the
having me.
director and founder at Lehrhaus Tavern in Somerville, where community building is as much a point as the food, Rabbi Charlie Schwartz. Charlie, it's great to have you here again. Thanks. Mamalehs.com or Lehrhaus, LEHRHAUS.com for more information on both their places. Good to see you all.
Okay, so before we get to the food and your great places you operate, Rabbi, we're going to start with you because Jim Browdy claims to have been number one in his bar mitzvah class.
Don't do this to me.
And yet this morning,
That is true, by the way.
this
That is
morning,
true.
he says, in preparation
No,
for coming
do
here,
not do this.
get
Do
a
not do
few
this.
stories about Passover so I know exactly what Passover is. And I
I'm
thought,
not going to forget this.
I
by
know
the way.
what Passover is. Why don't you? Maybe you should get him in for a crash
No,
course
we wanted
over
the
there.
experts to explain it. That's what I was trying to say. So go ahead. Go right ahead.
And to save Jim just for a minute,
Thank you.
It's important to note that everyone is invited to the Passover Seder, right?
That is correct.
Everyone is invited to the Passover table. It doesn't matter where you're coming from, who you are. Let all who are hungry come and eat. It's like a key line in the Seder. So, regardless of what Jim knows or doesn't know, of course he'd be. Thank you. Of course he'd be at the table.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, Passover is the retelling of the freedom narrative of the Jewish people, of
That's
the Exodus
right.
from Egypt,
That's right.
of going from slavery to freedom. That's it at its most essential core part. It's a retelling of that story that we do every year with our family and friends, and it's a holiday of hope.
Yeah.
It's a holiday that's grounded in a moment of despair, and saying that you can actually go from despair to moments of hope and joy.
That was beautiful. Jim
That's
says
what I
he
was
knows.
going to say, by the way.
Jim says he knows why there's matzah, but I'm not sure if he really does.
Okay, so can you, all of you have been on the show before, but just for people who don't know about it, one of the Rachels, give us a quick Mamaleh's update. Who wants to do that?
Me, I guess.
Okay, fine. Go ahead, Rachel.
Things are going great. We have 4 locations now. We moved
You have a fourth location?
Yeah.
Boston, Brookline, Cambridge. Where's the fourth?
Somerville. We moved all of our production into a production kitchen this summer in Somerville in the Boynton Yards area. And we have a little outlet sort of down the block from there. And we are in growth mode. We're looking to start growing and expanding and leaning into our Jewish deli.
What are you, for those who don't know, give a couple of specialties. What
Yeah,
are
especially for the Passover
What are the hot
menu.
items in that? Well, we're going to get to the menu.
Okay.
but
Well, For Passover, we won't eat bagels, but we do have a bagel bakery department that
She's
Rachel
the baker.
started
That's
up.
why she pointed
Rachel's
to the
the
other
baker.
Rachel, yes.
We have terrific pastrami, corned beef,
do.
chopped liver, matzo ball soup, desserts, rugelach.
Fair
things like
enough.
that.
Okay, Charlie.
I spent a lot of time at your place in Brookline, by the way, the matzo ball soup, especially in the wintertime when you have a little cold, it's nothing like matzo
Wintertime
ball.
like today, for example.
That's right, like
so,
today.
Charlie, tell us about Lehrhaus, both the food and the whole shtick thing.
Yeah, well, so shortly after we came on your show last time, we were named one of Esquire Magazine's best new restaurants in America, which I think was causal.
Congratulations.
We believe that, yes.
We're going strong. We're serving Jewish food from around the diaspora, whether that's kind of traditional North American food, Israeli food, North African food, Indian food, Yemenite food that's always associated with the Jewish community and tells Jewish stories. On top,
But it's more than a restaurant. I mean, you want to...
So on top of that, we're running classes 2 to 3 times a night on a huge range of Jewish topics, everything from Talmud you should know to the secret Jewish history of punk music. So you can come in on any given night, learn something great, get a great meal, get some amazing cocktails, and just connect with people.
Before we get into the happiness portion of this, the food you brought and all the wonderful stuff you guys serve, how much is the nightmare in the Middle East affect, if at all? Does it affect your business? I know it affects you personally, and obviously there's a lot of anti-Israeli sentiment because people are not happy with Netanyahu in Gaza these days. I mean, Rachel Sundet, is there an impact on your work?
I think, like you said, there's a personal impact for sure.
Sure.
In terms of our day-to-day at Mamaleh's, we haven't seen a huge impact, which we feel pretty grateful for. I think we have a really solid, wonderful community that comes into the deli, and we really make it kind of a cornerstone of what we're doing, that everyone is welcome and that it's a place for community, for gathering, for comfort, for connection. And
you have a big sign outside in Kendall Square that says proudly Jewish.
Yeah, because that's core to who we are.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what we're focusing on the most, is there's an incredible, wonderful amount of fabulous things about Judaism, and there's so much that's centered around joy and storytelling and connection over food, but also just being Jewish is great. So we're trying to kind of just really reinforce that part. I think we're not experts in politics, and we don't really want to.
I got it. How about you, Rabbi? Is there an impact in your place?
Just to reiterate, like on a personal level, it's really hard to be fully joyous when there's still hostages in Gaza. There's still conflict and violence going on there. So I just want to name that as a personal struggle.
Uh-huh.
What we see is something similar. Is actually the people thirsty for the celebration of Jewish joy. So a lot of Jewish people, like right now, aren't always comfortable with their Jewish identities in public, and to have places like Mamaleh's or like Lehrhaus that aren't just solely for Jews or for everyone, but where people can feel the most comfortable in their Jewish identity. We see a lot of that and a lot of importance in that.
But I would think that would also be a time, in a way, when people do want to gather, Jews or non-Jews, to talk about Judaism, just as if you're a Jewish person, to be like Jim, maybe learn a little bit about your religion, or if you're not, to get a little bit more grounded in a faith they may not understand.
Yeah, 100%. Also, because Judaism is wonderful. It's a wonderful inheritance that we have that we're able to share with people, whether it's on the food or on the book side, on the learning side. It's a wonderful tradition.
Okay, so let's get to the food.
Wait. Let me just say one more thing.
You may.
To plug the Lehrhaus.
Yes.
Charlie's underselling also what a special place it is, the learning side and the food side, and that you just walk in and you really feel a place of comfort. So I just want to make sure that that's clear.
But I say this, you can hang out. That's my impression. You can hang out and eat food and talk to people and have drinks, as you say, like a gathering space, a third place, as we talk about.
Sort of like Boston Public Radio, if you know what I mean. Do you understand what that is there?
Yeah, I guess so.
Sort of.
I guess so.
Now, before you describe, we'll start with the Rachels, describe what you brought that we can eat here. One of the things I read on your Passover thing, and I'm a huge matzah fan, a sandwich with matzah instead of bread. How do you even eat such a thing,
I'll
Rachel?
speak to that one.
Please.
Basically, for the length of Passover, what we pretty much say is if you're willing to try to eat it, we will make it for you.
I love that concept.
So if you want to go for it, we're here for it. And it's messy. It's not pretty. I don't necessarily say that you want to do it in front of a lot of people, but we've had, Novolax on matzah. You can make a turkey sandwich on matzah. We've also will put stuff on latkes. So if you want to have a Reuben that's kind of open-faced on latkes, we'll make it for you.
So there was an auction, speaking of latkes, a couple of years ago where people bid a lot of money for reasons we're unclear about, well, except your connection, to join Marjorie and me in learning how to make potato latkes.
That's right.
In the basement of Mamaleh's. How would you say we did, Rachel Sundet?
You guys were excellent.
That's a lie. Okay,
perfect students.
That is a total lie.
The great thing is they were absolutely so fresh. I mean, we're just eating them right there. It was great.
So what'd you bring? Let's start with Mamaleh's. What's here?
Well, so we were really leaning into what we know Marjorie loves.
Yes.
And so we brought gefilte fish.
Yeah, thank you.
We didn't put any on your plate.
It's one of my favorite foods in the world, by the way.
Oh, well, so there we go.
Love gefilte fish.
Gefilte fish is polarizing. Either you grow up not ever wanting to go near it, or you really love it. But we make ours in-house. It's mixed with, it's a mixture of salmon and pollock. And then we brought chopped liver for you.
I love chopped liver.
And then we brought our haroset and horseradish, our beet horseradish.
Explain what haroset is, please.
So haroset is symbolic of the cement that was used building between the bricks while they were building the pyramids as slaves in Egypt. So this is a Sephardic recipe, which means that the Ashkenazi is usually fresh apples. This one is a mixture of apples, but also with dried fruit and walnuts. It's really sticky and really sweet. And the combination, we put it on matzah with the horseradish for you to try, a classic Hillel sandwich, which is symbolic of the sweet and the suffering at once and finding the joy in challenging moments.
Okay, and before we get to Charlie here in a second, can you wax poetic about horseradish? I would have to say, if I had to pick my 5 favorite, is that a condiment? Does that count as a condiment?
It's a condiment.
So. Okay, a condiment. I would say horseradish is up there, and I don't understand why people eat white horseradish rather than making it beautiful by adding beets. Do either of you want to comment on that, Rachel or Rachel?
I don't know either why people eat it white.
Don't you own a big restaurant or something?
I do.
Yeah.
I actually have a horseradish tradition in my family.
What is it?
That my grandfather made it, my father made it, now I make it. My brother makes it. We made it twice this year because my dad and I made it together earlier in the week, and he didn't think it was spicy enough. And now the tradition is that we take videos of my children sticking their face in and smelling it until they go crazy.
That's great.
Can you hand that stuff over here if you don't mind, please? Yes.
Okay. I would say with the white, my mom likes white also. It tends to be a little bit hotter because it doesn't have the sweetness of the beets to kind of mellow it a little bit. But I agree with you. The beet one is really beautiful.
Speaking of your mother, we know we have a
they
connection.
say hi.
They're wonderful. Your parents are just spectacular.
Yep, have to deliver a hug afterwards.
Okay, please do. Okay, Rabbi, what's happening over there at the Lehrhaus contribution?
All right, so we're actually closed for Passover. We're a certified kosher establishment, so kind of turning everything over would be too complicated. So everything that is here is actually currently on the menu. So first we have a spirit-free mixed drink called New Traditions. And this is kind of playing on the idea that in every generation, one should see themselves as if they've come out of Egypt. And part of that is adding new traditions to the Seder. So here we have a beet for vegetarians who might... All right.
It's seltzer.
You top it with a little Jewish champagne. You got to make it fancy.
Okay.
So there's
keep talking. Yeah, thank you very much.
And ginger, which is often used as maror for Eastern communities. There's an orange in there, so a little bit of orange, some chamomile, some other great stuff as well. Here we have our Seder salad, which has a horseradish vinaigrette, roasted crouton, some greens, and some shaved beet on top, kind of all parts that you might find on a Seder plate. And here, I'll pass to Marjorie first. We have a flourless orange cake with a white chocolate mascarpone.
Ooh, Marjorie, go for it. I have a question here. I am if you were to ask me prior to preparing for this segment, Rabbi, what is the best fried fish in Greater Boston? It is down the street from me at the Druid in Inman Square. And then I wake up and I read a story that says, no, that would not be true. There's another place that has the best fried fish. Where would that be?
It would also be down the street from you.
That's correct.
At Lehrhaus. The Druid does a great job. I mean, their fish and chips is amazing from what I hear. Our fish and chips tells a slightly different story.
What's the story?
The story is, so fish and chips actually is a Jewish dish. It was brought up from Spain as those communities were expelled and made their way to England. So like fish and chips in itself is Jewish. Then we serve it with Old Bay French fries, because Old Bay was invented by a Jew fleeing the Holocaust. We mix it with, on the side we have a little bit of schrug aioli, schrug being that spicy Yemenite dip. Then we top it off with a little bit of amba vinegar, amba being like a funky mango sauce that's common among Iraqi and Indian Jews.
I will be there in a second. How is business these days? I mean, we have a lot of restaurateurs through who, this is pre-tariff expulsion of people from other countries and all the horrors that we're living through. We hear about costs, we hear about workforce issues, a whole bunch of things. Let's start with Mamaleh. How is business?
No, business is great. We're, I think we finally hit a stride following the pandemic, which seems so crazy to say that 5 years later, but it really has taken a long time to get into that. And the past couple of years have trended down a little bit, if you want to talk numbers, but I think overall there's a good sentiment, and we're just trying to keep the momentum going.
How worried are you that people are going to have less disposable income? Apparently, the estimates range from $2,100 to $3,500 that the average person would be spending a year on the tariff taxes. Does that worry you, or?
It's sort of finding this balance of not immediately jumping every time something happens, and dreading the worst, and also planning for the fact that this could impact us. In Cambridge and Brookline, I think we're in slightly more insulated areas, and so we keep that in mind.
You do think that being in the food business, you hear that the price of food is going to go up, so your expenses might be going up as well, and then you're stuck about raising prices or eating the loss, which is tough.
How's the business over at Lehrhaus there?
Overall, it's similar. It's overall solid. We also have a slightly different business model. We're a not-for-profit, so we have a charitable mission of spreading the love of Jewish life and learning. So that eases some of the stressors, but we still have to do a good job and serve people in the best way possible.
Okay, well you spread love with this delicious cake that I'm. And by the way, the horseradish, the whole thing.
It's called chopped liver.
But what do we call? Yeah, the chopped liver is great. Beyond. But what do we call this cake again?
It's a flourless orange cake with a white chocolate marzipan.
It's really different and it's great, and the white chocolate marzipan is unbelievable. But we have a question about horseradish from a listener. Elizabeth is watching on YouTube and wants to know, where do you find good horseradish roots? We haven't found a good root in years. Anybody help Elizabeth?
That's interesting. I think we usually go to Whole Foods for my family stuff. We got really spicy roots this year. Actually, I wanted to mention that the chefs were making this batch of horseradish in the kitchen, and they have a respirator that they bring in.
Is that true?
Because we're grinding so much. It's really it's
overwhelming.
Really powerful. So so our chef Jeremy, he puts the whole mask on, and then they passed it around so when they were packaging it up, they could share in it. We got a good spicy batch this year.
Gefilte fish is unbelievable, by the way. And I just ask, this crouton, what is this thing?
So it's a roasted crouton.
Oh my God!
Similar to the symbolic mortar. Yeah.
What's in this thing?
It's I think some dates and honey and.
Oh my God! It is real. I'm sorry, Marjorie. Go ahead.
So I think of Mamaleh as you can sit there and eat, and you can have the chairs out in the street. On the sidewalk, rather, in the nice weather, but are you a restaurant? Are you a takeout? Is it both things? What's the deal?
Yes.
You're both.
Yes.
You're both.
I think we're everything. Yeah. I think our model changed a lot from COVID, and so we don't have table service. If you haven't been in since pre-2020, it's different. It's different for sure.
You have the newspaper there while you're waiting.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah,
nice touch.
Yeah, we try to find the moments for that nice sense of hospitality elsewhere, because it's counter service, so you can come up, you don't have to worry about reservations. It's kind of first come first serve. Order at the counter, grab your food, and then hang out, have a cup of coffee, have a pastry, eat as much as you want, gather with friends, do a little bit of work. We're kind of whatever you want. And we also do private and for fun events. But you can come and reserve a spot in the Cambridge store for gatherings, that kind of thing too. So
and at Lehrhaus, you might come if you wanted to take a class and you would be eating and drinking during the class. Is that how it works?
Drinking, not eating, because we think drinking helps the class, eating doesn't.
Okay, and like, what kind of classes are you offering right now?
Yeah, again, like all sorts of things. So introduction classes to Judaism. We have a great Yiddish class going. Hebrew poetry. We did a great session with Robert Pinsky not too long ago.
Oh,
we had him on a
really?
few weeks ago.
He's amazing
he's
guy.
Wonderful.
Amazing guy. Yeah, so like a huge range. Like we like to say, if it's a text and it's Jewish, we'll teach it.
So can I ask the same stupid question I've asked all of you almost every time you're here? What took so long for Boston to be open restaurants with Jewish food? I mean, I lived in New York for 15 years, as I've said to all of you. I spent my whole life in a Jewish delicatessen, one or the other, in Brooklyn, Lower Manhattan, Midtown, that sort of thing. Starting with you, Charlie, what took so long for this all to happen, do you think?
I mean, S&S has been there forever.
Well, S&S has, and I love it. But it's a generic. I don't mean that in a critical way. I love S&S.
Yeah.
But it's a generic kind of thing, too.
So there's about 1.2 million Jews in the New York area. There's about 250,000 in the Boston area. So it's just like the population side is radically different. That being said, S&S, Reuben's, like there's a long history of fantastic kosher restaurants and Jewish restaurants here.
You buy that?
I do. I mean, I think the issue is more there's a gap. So there's a long history, and Jack and Marion's, B&D Deli.
Yeah, that was there for years.
Joan and Ed's, places. Those were like I was not around for Jack and Marion's, but we would go to Joan and Ed's. We would go to B&D, but then they closed. And then there was this gap where where delis were closing. I know less about the kosher restaurant scene. I know Shalom.
And there's
Hunan.
Russian in Brookline. There's Russian places, Russian supermarkets, and there used to be a Russian restaurant on the corner. That went out of business, and now it's a French restaurant. But that Russian restaurant was there for years.
Yeah,
Remember?
and I think there was a Russian deli. We've been told there was a Russian deli in our spot where we were in Brookline before Dunkin' Donuts was there.
That's right.
So.
Okay, before you go, who's responsible for the cheesecake? Because we're both going to eat it. Who's that?
So that's on our Passover menu also.
You did that too?
Yeah. This one, it's our classic cheesecake, but this one it's swirled with chocolate also, and it's on a brown sugar matzah crust.
I'm taking this one. I just wanted to let you know.
Well, I have one, Marjorie. Thank you.
I know.
A little selfish, but I do have one.
Well, I've already eaten this. This is unbelievable. You got to try this too.
Hey, it's great to see you all.
I'm taking
Happy
the chopped liver,
Passover.
too.
I hope your business thrives. What is that thing?
That's a little toy we brought for you.
Oh my God. It's working. That is so moving.
The walking matzo
Literally.
ball.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that. Thank you so much. Great to see all three of you. Good luck with everything.
So much. Thank you very much. So fun to talk to you, and thank you for a delicious lunch and delicious dessert to go with it. Okay, we've been speaking with Rachel Miller-Munzer and Rachel Sundet, co-founders of Mamaleh's Delicatessen, multiple locations, Greater Boston, one right near me on Beacon Street in Brookline, another in Somerville. Where in Boston? High Street? Were you guys in High Street?
High Street Place.
High Street Place. Okay, thank you very much. And the Lehrhaus in Somerville, director, co-founder, Rabbi Charlie Schwartz. Thank you all so much for coming in.
Give the website.
I want to give the website, mamalehs.com. I'll spell it for you, M-A-M-A-L-E-H-S, mamalehs.com, M-A-M-A-L-E-H-S, or Lehr.house. I'll spell that for you, Lehrhaus, or Lehr.house in the middle, too. You can do it that way. Okay, for more on both their restaurants, check out those sites. Happy Passover to everybody. Coming up after a quick break, it is time for two more things. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
There's nothing cooler than an evening of live jazz. GBH Music and Jazz Boston are teaming up for a series of unforgettable concerts. Jazz Now at our Brighton studios. On Thursday, April 10th, Farai Malik. Performing songs from her new EP, Edge of the Earth. Learn more and reserve your tickets at gbh.org/events.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Boston Youth Symphony Orchestras, conducted by music director Federico Cortese, presenting a concert for the whole family, BYSO on Parade, April 13th at 1:30 at Symphony Hall, bysoweb.org. And Newport Mansions, presenting Richard Morris Hunt in a new light, a groundbreaking exhibition examining the architect's impact on American culture and his vision for a gilded American civilization. Opening May 30th at Rosecliff.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. The auditor will be here in about 35 minutes for Ask the Auditor for the last 30 minutes of the show. But first, it's time for two more things. We actually have time for two more things today. Marjorie, take it away.
Okay, so this is John Chesto writing in the Boston Globe today. Has President Trump picked a fight with the wrong law firm? That's one way to read the suit that Boston firm WilmerHale filed against the Trump administration on March 28th after it became the latest target of Donald Trump's revenge campaign against his supposed many, many enemies. In WilmerHale's case, the former partner there was Robert Mueller. You may recall him. He led the investigation into the Russian interference in the 2016 election and detected close to a dozen instances of Trump obstructing justice in that regard. But anyway, WilmerHale knows a lot about bullying because a lawyer from their predecessor, when it used to be Hale and Dorr, is Senator Joseph, remember Senator Joseph McCarthy? He was the guy that was dragging everybody in, accusing them of being communists.
House Un-American Activities Committee.
The bow-tied Boston lawyer who kind of ruined his career was from Hale and Dorr, and he's the guy that accosted McCarthy and said, at long last, have you no decency, sir? And of course, sitting next to McCarthy was Roy Cohn, who is the guy that has mentored Donald Trump. He's no longer with us, he's dead now, but he taught Trump to deny, and lie until people believe the lie. So I just want to, I want to leave Jim enough time here.
Thank you.
This firm is putting a lot at risk. They've got $300 million in annual revenue and all these clients. I mean, they're risking a lot to do this. And a lot of firms have capitulated much faster, including Doug Emhoff's firm. He was the second gentleman married to Kamala Harris. He criticized his firm, but he's still working there.
I know that.
So I take that for what it is. But in any case, WilmerHale has stood up to Donald Trump, and some other firms have done it too, and I hope that this courageousness is contagious and other people will not let this bully shut them down.
Well, I'm going to talk about courage too, by the way. An official in the Trump administration who chose not to violate the law in furtherance of the Trump agenda. Do you know who Melanie Krause is? I didn't either. Melanie Krause is now the former head of the Internal Revenue Service. She ran it for a month. In fact, she's the third head of the IRS in 3 months with Trump. She resigned after the dog killer, that's Kristi Noem, who runs Homeland Security, and the IRS behind her back made an agreement to provide sensitive taxpayer information on immigration so that the Trump administration could deport undocumented people. Again, in clear violation of relevant privacy laws, and because Krause wouldn't play along, she learned about the deal from the news, and again, she quit. On the other hand, let's spend a minute on non-heroes. It's relevant. The capitulating law firms and their disingenuous emails to their firm members saying they would never sacrifice their principles, even though they're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars defending Trump's pet causes. Yesterday, when Trump was signing executive orders promoting the use of the dirtiest of fossil fuels, coal, here's what he said.
I call it beautiful, clean coal. I tell my people never use the word coal unless you put beautiful, clean before.
Okay, fine. Beautiful,
right,
clean coal. He said it many times. He also said this, Marjorie, about the capitulating law firms. Have you noticed that a lot of law firms have been signing up with Trump? And then he went on to say that one of the first contributions from these law firms and the hundreds of millions of dollars of free legal services they're going to give is to the coal companies and their leases to make sure we have air we can't breathe. So some people do the right thing when confronted by an autocrat. Some do not. I think Marjorie and I agree that neither should be forgotten.
Okay, coming up after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to open the lines to you guys.
You trust by donating your car, truck, or other used vehicle to our vehicle donation program. You'll have more space in the driveway this spring, and you may earn a tax advantage. Learn more at gbh.org/vehicle donation.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Celebrity Series, presenting the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, featuring Mr. Ailey's timeless masterpiece, Revelations, April 24th through 27th at the Box Center Wang Theater. Tickets at celebrityseries.org. And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts and working to connect industry leaders to graduates, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. The Globe's Deborah First is extolling the virtues of her rice cooker in the paper today and has us thinking about the kitchen appliances we hold dear and the ones we probably shouldn't have bought to begin with. And if you're Marjorie, you're obviously thinking fondly of that S&M police raid in Attleboro years ago when Attleboro was briefly renamed Paddleboro. Anyway, it's your most loved and least used kitchen appliance.
Okay, I'm Marjorie Egan, then at State Auditor Diana DiZoglio, here for another edition of Ask the Auditor. We'll ask her about her ongoing crusade to audit the legislature, as new polling shows most voters want to see Attorney General Campbell enforce the audit law. Have your own questions you'd like to ask the auditor? Call, text, or find us at the library and ask her in person. That's all next on the third hour, Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. China has issued a travel warning for its citizens planning to visit the United States. The notification comes as the trade war between the world's top two economies escalates with steep tit-for-tat tariffs. Here's NPR's John Ruich.
China's Ministry of Culture and Tourism issued the warning. It says Chinese tourists should fully assess the risks of traveling to the United States and, quote, travel with caution, given deteriorating economic and trade relations. It also noted the security situation in the United States, but did not give details. Separately, the Ministry of Education issued a reminder to students planning to study abroad to carefully assess safety risks and enhance their awareness of potential dangers when considering studying in certain U.S. states. The notice referenced an Ohio law that restricts educational exchanges in cooperation with China. The moves come on the heels of the Chinese government retaliating for high tariffs placed on Chinese goods by the Trump administration. John Ruich, NPR News, Beijing.
This today from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
I think it's unfortunate that the Chinese actually don't want to come and negotiate because they are the worst offenders in the international trading system. They have the most imbalanced economy in the history of the modern world. And I can tell you that this escalation is a loser for them.
Bessent on Fox Business News. The White House says it is freezing more than $1 billion in federal funding for Cornell University and around $790 million for Northwestern University while the government investigates alleged civil rights violations at both schools. Here's NPR's Alyssa Nedwarney.
The funding cuts are part of an effort by the Trump administration to use government funding to get colleges and universities to comply with the president's political agenda. In a statement, Cornell said it had received more than 75 stop work orders from the Department of Defense related to research in national defense, cybersecurity, and health. The university's president said they were actively seeking information from the government to understand why these decisions were made. Last month, the Education Department opened an investigation into dozens of universities for allegedly failing to protect Jewish students on campus. Alyssa Nadwarny, NPR News.
A federal judge in Texas is blocking the Trump administration's deportation of Venezuelans who are currently in detention in South Texas to El Salvador. ACLU of Texas filed an emergency lawsuit in federal court to pause removals under the Alien Enemies Act for people within that court's judicial district. Within hours, a judge granted a temporary restraining order blocking the government from transferring any person under the act outside two nearby counties. The suit comes after the U.S. Supreme Court earlier this week lifted a pause on the use of the Alien Enemies Act. U.S. stocks trading higher this hour with the Dow up 451 points or more than 1% at last check. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Worcester leaders say the city needs to do more to address rising homelessness. Data shows Worcester's unhoused population has steadily increased in recent years, with families struggling to afford homes. The city has opened multiple temporary shelters to help people escape the cold this winter, but those shelters are expected to close as we get into spring. At a Worcester City Council meeting last night, City Manager Eric Batista said he's trying to open more shelters, but is struggling to find funding as well as organizations to run them.
Every agency has challenges with capacity and being able to take on an operation like that. The city doesn't operate shelters.
City leaders say they're concerned that recent funding cuts to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development will also hamstring local efforts to connect people with affordable apartments. Officials at Harvard University have confirmed that they're checking the status of student visas on a daily basis after it was announced on Sunday that 5 international Harvard affiliates had their visas revoked. The Crimson reports that according to an email sent yesterday, the Harvard Graduate Students Union United Auto Workers contacted Harvard's international office with a list of requests, one of which is to check visa status of international students daily and notify those students of any changes within 30 minutes. Union also requested that the HIO expand email communications to include undocumented and deferred action for childhood arrivals affiliates and share those updates with the wider Harvard community. 42 degrees in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, where drivers can compare direct rates using Progressive's rate comparison tool. Customers can see options and rates side by side. More at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE.
Here's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com. Thank you. YouTube.com/GBH News. Diana DiZoglio, the state order, is going to be here in about a half hour for another edition of Ask the Auditor. And the governor, Maura Healey, will be here April 25th, also at the Boston Public Library. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. So Deborah First is out with an ode to a rice cooker in the Boston Globe today. And it had us thinking about the kitchen appliances we love, or the ones we just can't stand and are gathering dust in our pantries. And we wanted to know, and by the way, don't just name the appliance. What is the kitchen appliance that you really swear by? What's the one that really means the world to you? Is it the sense of set it and forget it appliances? That's what Deborah First said, one of the many things she liked about a rice cooker. Or has something else completely changed your life? A specific way to make your coffee, a coveted symbol of a certain socioeconomic class, the Cuisinart stand mixer, perhaps. The number is 877-301-8970. I should say up front, and I think there's going to be an unequal thing going on between you. I love kitchen appliances. I mean, I
sure
do.
You do, Jim.
I love them. I love looking at them. If they're pretty and they're nicely colored, it really makes me happy in the morning when I walk into the kitchen. And I know I use a lot more than you do. So since you're on the sort of shorter side of that, do you have a favorite kitchen appliance?
Well, you know, I got lucky because I bought things for my children, like for Christmas or engagements and stuff, and they had no room for them in their New York City apartments, so I inherited.
Is that really true?
I have a wonderful espresso machine that my daughter had no room for.
Well, that's actually a really good thing to have.
And I've got one of those great blenders. I forget the name of it. It's a veggie something or other.
Vegematic? Not a Vegematic.
It's expensive.
They're like really expensive.
Yeah, it was
expensive. What is that called? Vegemite? No,
I was looking it up.
Slap chop,
I couldn't find it.
Slap chop.
It's
no, what's that called? What's that? It's really expensive.
I was trying to look it up, but I couldn't find. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Anyway, you can make wonderful smoothies, and you know I love smoothies. But my other thing that I use a lot, it's just so funny. You don't think how much this matters. Is a lemon squeezer. You know, if you're making anything with lemons in it, you just cut the lemon in half or in quarters, you put it in the squeezer, and it just crushes the whole thing. It's kind of like getting a mammogram, you know what I mean? And every little piece of juice comes out of the lemon, and you don't have to, like, squeeze it with your hands.
Yeah, it's fairly primitive. I mean, you know
it's
that.
Fairly primitive, as are mammograms.
Well, I have a primitive and a fairly sophisticated thing. Now, I'm hesitant to say what the sophisticated thing is because, unfortunately, it's a French word, which means you're going to make fun of me.
Oh, we're ready.
Okay, so do you know what sous vide is?
Oh, it's a method of cooking.
It is unbelievable. And you know why it's great?
You have to get special dishes.
No, you don't.
Oh.
You actually get a thing that heats water.
Oh, okay.
And you put whatever you're cooking in a plastic bag, you seal it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to do a little crisping or whatever it is before, and you put it in this plastic bag in the water. The water heats up with this device in the pan.
Oh.
And you know what? To quote Deborah First around the rice cooker, set it and forget it. You can never overcook a steak, a piece of fish. You're obviously totally unimpressed. Now that's
No, I don't really understand what the device is.
It heats the water.
You have to buy the device? Is that what you have to get?
It heats the water, and then it maintains the water at a specific temperature and cooks this stuff. And when I say perfectly every time, that's my more sophisticated thing. Thank you for not making fun of me.
What's your basic thing?
It's not an appliance. I am embarrassed to say, until about 5 or 6 years ago, you know what I'd never used in my whole life that I use almost every day now? A cast iron pan.
Oh, cast iron pans.
Oh my
People
God,
love cast
it has
iron
changed
pans.
my whole life.
What is the way that you clean a cast iron pan, please? Aren't there special instructions?
I don't use soap.
You don't use soap?
First of all, it is really critical that you use oil on it. You know that afterwards every single time.
Yeah.
And you just have one of these special cast iron scrubbers. You put it in hot water, and you allow all the crap to come out of it, and then you scrape it with this thing.
Is that what the Le Creuset, are those cast iron?
No, as a matter of fact, they're not. Lodge and things like that. Le Creuset is a different kind of pan.
Okay.
Obviously, Marjorie's not going to be able to participate very much in this.
But you know, there's another story about the ones that are kind of useless. Here's one: silicone-tipped tongs. They said they should be aluminum tongs. They do a much better job. And also these silicone spatulas, that you're much better off with a molded plastic spatula, even though that's bad for the environment. There are certain things that do really badly. And a lot of people feel very strongly, Jim, about garlic presses. They love the garlic press.
Now, everybody loves garlic press. Nobody likes cleaning a garlic press. Is that a fair statement? Am I losing you in this discussion, or what's happening?
That's when you press it down on.
Yeah, it's called a garlic press. That's why it's called a press. That's
right.
where the name comes from.
They're difficult to clean.
You put garlic in it, you press it, thus the name garlic press.
All the little holes are difficult.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're very difficult.
Little holes. You have to do that kind of. No, but actually that's not true, because most garlic presses, do you know that when you reverse the direction of the press and you turn it around, little things creep into the holes and push the garlic remains out.
Thank you.
You didn't know that?
No, I did not know that,
Okay,
Jim.
877-301-8097. This is going to be a disaster, I can tell.
No, I was
We're
trying to
asking
find
your
the name
favorite
of the
appliance
blender,
and your least favorite.
The great blender.
We can't think of the name. Does anybody know what the name of a really expensive blender
it's like
is?
$300. They're really expensive.
And nobody knows anything here.
I'll look it up.
That's good. Thank you,
Or maybe
though.
one of our colleagues can look it up.
What's it called? Ninja. No, not a ninja. No,
It's
not
like a
magic
ninja.
bullet. No. What'd you say? No, not a quiz.
No, it's like
fine.
a ninja, but it's not.
Okay, this is really good radio. 877. We're going to continue to talk to people who they can't hear on the radio, like John and Zoe and everybody else.
Okay.
David and Wellesley, you were first, I think, on Boston Public Radio. You're first. Hi. Vitamix. Isn't that what it is? Vitamix. Yes? No?
Vitamix.
Vitamix. You're responsible.
That's it.
Thank you.
The Vitamix.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, my God. It's gone up in price.
Okay, good. David and Wellesley, welcome to the show. Hi.
David and Wellesley, good afternoon.
Hello.
That's correct. Go ahead.
I bought a Roku.
What's that?
First generation food processor.
Oh.
Yes, in 1982, while working at the Front Street restaurant in Boston and Provincetown.
Whoa.
When I was broke. I went to Jordan Marsh, bought it, and I used it last night to make a chocolate tart.
43 years you've had it?
I've had it 43 years, yep.
That is great. I've been to Front Street in Provincetown, by the way. I'd just like to say that. And how's it working?
It's amazing.
Do you feel like it's part of your family kind of thing?
Absolutely. I would have no idea what to do without it. It weighs about 20 pounds.
Yeah.
It will chop up 5 pounds of nuts with no trouble. And the best part is I find parts for it off and on at the transfer station here in Wellfleet.
It's fabulous. He's in Wellfleet. Oh, not Wellesley. David, it's great to talk to you. That was a wonderful start. Thank you very much for the call.
Listen to this one. Not the most practical, but the one that brings me joy is my kitchen blowtorch. Tiny, so packs away easily. It was like $10. And every time I use it for creme brulee or sushi, I get a thrill. You ever heard of a kitchen blowtorch?
Well, isn't that what you use for, what's that dessert where you do?
Creme brulee.
Creme brulee, yeah.
That's what they
so
say
isn't that what
they
you use it for? Oh, sorry.
And in the case of an apocalypse, the texter says it might not be a bad thing to have as well.
877-301-8970. By the way, you have to love the appliance that you're calling about, like that first emailer did. He really loved that appliance.
The texters are, about 20 people told me it was a Vitamix, so thank you very much. I was just on the wrong page.
Why didn't you read them?
Because I was on the wrong page.
You were. Vitamix, is that the name of the thing?
Yes, Vitamix.
Thank you.
Pamela from Boston, thank you for calling.
Hi.
Hi.
I have two very low-tech
choices, and there's a lemon squeezer.
Yeah.
It looks like a little lemon on top, but then it squeezes into a chamber. I have two of them. One, it's 1 ounce or a ½ ounce. It has the measurements on the side, so if you need to measure out a tablespoon or a teaspoon, it just is there. You don't have to take out your measuring spoon. And then I have another one that it's like a ½ cup of lemon juice. And those are very low tech. And also my cookie scoop. I don't make a lot of cookies, but I make these healthy oatmeal bites, and I use that cookie scoop once a week. And I didn't own one before, and I don't know why I didn't have one.
Well, you know how to live. Don't go away, Pamela. I'm embarrassed. I love the lemon squeezer as much as Marjorie does, but when you squeeze, my experience is you squeeze the lemon, the juice is all over the kitchen. You have something that has a container attached to it, so it not only...
Yes.
And then it measures with measuring thing in it.
Boy, that's a very sophisticated one.
Oh, my God.
I should move on to that one.
That is heavenly.
I have the one where you have to be careful because it squirts all over the place.
And Pamela, thank you. That was excellent. You know, by the way, because I teased this at the top of the show at 11 o'clock, could you explain, because you wrote beautifully about this, why we brought up the concept of paddleboro at the top of the show? What is paddleboro?
I wrote a column about this a long time ago when I was at the naughty Boston Herald.
Yeah.
Well, I forget what year it was. Let me see.
It's like 20 plus years ago.
Yeah, 20 plus years ago. On July 8th, 2 police officers broke into a warehouse in Attleboro, Massachusetts, supposedly looking for stolen guitars.
Yep.
Instead, they found a rollicking sex party. About 50 people, various stages of undress, paddling each other with wooden spoons and whipping each other with spatulas and otherwise engaging in sadomasochistic fun. And the question was really, after this story appeared, you know, you think of your wooden spoons and your spatulas in a different kind of way. Who knew what you could be doing with the wooden spoons and the spatulas? But I don't think they had to do any time. But the district attorney made a convincing case, and the press had a field day with fetishists defend the pursuit of pain with their spatulas, and quote, spank bust ripped as bum wrap.
You know, that's a good line, actually. That's a very good line. And you know what they do in Attleboro with a Vitamix? Let me tell you, that is really
have to watch
scary.
Out.
Elaine in Cambridge, what's your favorite? I can't believe we're asking people, but we are. What's your favorite appliance that excites you as much as Cara Baskin was, Deborah First, was excited about the rice cooker?
I am absolutely the most excited about an electric kettle that I got a few months ago. It is a game changer.
Well, we're losing you.
Yeah, but
Don't
I think
go
I
away.
heard it. Electric kettle.
No, we're going to come back to you because my older daughter's electric tea kettle is her favorite thing, too. Elaine, don't go away. We hope you have better connection. We'll take a call, and then we'll come back to you in a minute.
Yeah, they're great. My daughter has one of those. They're great.
She does? Okay,
yes.
Where are we going? And don't hang up on Elaine. We'll try her again in a second. We're next, friends in Brighton. That would be Patrick in Boston. We're talking, incredibly enough, kitchen appliances.
Here's a good one. Potato ricer.
I love
Nancy
those,
says
too.
it was
I
for
have
her
one of those.
grandmother's.
I love that.
Yeah, Nancy's from Kittyport, Maine.
Okay, Patrick, what's up?
So first to get Marjorie back in the... Why do
I know there's an echo. It's our fault.
Sorry.
Go ahead. But we're fine here, so go ahead. Keep trying.
Okay. So for Marjorie, we got to get her back in the... I can't even hear my own voice. I'm sorry.
Oh, Patrick,
I'm sorry,
we're sorry. We're really sorry. That happens
we're trying
occasionally.
to fix it.
Thank you, but we'll fail at that, I'm sure. Okay, Patrick, thank you anyway. We're sorry we didn't get to it. What?
A texter says, I just wanted to be the first one to text crockpot.
Well, no, I was going to say that, but then I thought you'd make fun of it because you don't. You know, by the way, it really is. I don't mean to, since someone else brought it up, I can bring it up. The fact that you never used any of the ones I gave you, beyond that it's a little upsetting. No, I'm serious. For someone who's not a great cook, there is nothing that is better for somebody who's not a great cook.
Yeah, one of these days.
And they're great outcomes with absolutely no effort.
Well, that's what people say about the rice cooker.
Yeah.
That, you know, if you do it in the stovetop, like a lot of people do, it come out a little bit too hard, a little bit too mushy.
Well, you have to time it, too.
And the rice cooker makes it perfect.
Well, you know, also
side.
rice cooker. I learned this from that same daughter I was talking about who loves her electric tea kettle. She steams vegetables in it, a whole bunch of things. It's not just for rice cooking. Marjorie doesn't care about that either.
I am. I'm listening.
No, you're not.
to it.
Here's an anonymous texter. Paddleboro case also led to Massachusetts being one of the states where, well, actually, we won't read that. Thank you. Lynn in Canton, you are next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi, Lynn.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I have two appliances, actually. One is a small, low-tech $5 contraption that takes the pits off a cherry.
Love that.
And it's
I have
like
one of
the
those.
best thing. It's
Fabulous.
$5, and it's the best thing.
And the pits
And
just
the
shoot
other
across the
appliance I
room,
like-
right? You use this thing like a syringe.
Yeah.
I love that. Go
Right,
ahead.
after the first couple of times, then you know, and then you just aim it into the right spot.
It's beautiful. Go ahead.
And then the Instapot is something that is a must-have in the kitchen.
Yeah, could you
Isn't that the
speak
rice
about
cooker?
No. Well, you can use an Instapot as a rice cooker. I don't have one. What is the joy of an Instapot? A lot of people love them there, Lynn.
Well, it's a pressure cooker, but it's just electric. And you put things in it, and you set it, and it is like foolproof.
And it's fast too, right?
Cooking like dried beans, and it's faster too. I mean, actually, faster may not be, because by the time it builds the steam up, and then you have to wait till it cools down. So it's not really that much faster, but it's just foolproof, and it cooks really well.
That was a beautiful call. Low tech, high tech. Lynn, thank you for the call. You ever had a cherry pitter?
No, have you?
Oh, it's great.
Are they great?
It's like a syringe. I said you put it on the end of you use it on an olive too. And you stick it on one end, you plunge the thing down, and then, as Lynn said, until you're used to it, the pit goes to the other side of the room until you figure out how to use it. And it's huge fun, too, I should say. One of our colleagues said this. Kind of surprised nobody said the air fryer. The air fryer is like the biggest thing there is right now, right?
Yeah,
you have an air fryer?
I do, but I've never used it. Yeah, I got one of those new ovens down my sister's down the Cape with the new oven. You know, the environment.
I'm not going to tell you what it is. What's it called?
I forget.
Convection.
Convection. Thank you. Got one of those, and it came with an air fryer, but it's sparkling.
Came with an air fryer. Haven't used the oven. Haven't used the air fryer.
Haven't used either. That's right.
Yeah,
you got to get the oven, so we've got it. We're
haven't
just
used
waiting.
the crock pot.
Waiting
Haven't
for
used
the
the air fryer.
Well, I'm not much of a cook, you know.
Okay.
Listen to this one though. Who knew there were so many different kind of corkscrews? Texture just said waiter's corkscrew, mechanical corkscrews,
They're great.
wing corkscrews, and Swiss Army knife.
The problem is they can get really expensive. The really high quality corkscrews. Now, let me just tell you.
A frother for espresso. That's a great one. You can't have an espresso machine without a frother.
Okay, fine. Let me just say this right here.
Yeah.
Now, this anonymous texter, we're talking about kitchen appliances, and you may think this text is ridiculous because the person says, "I love my kitchen foot massager." Now, we're having a preparation meeting this morning to discuss this segment, and all of our staff and me were mentioning kitchen appliances. What's the first thing you mentioned?
Well, you got me like 4 crock pots. For some reason, people think they should just give me multiples of the same thing. Because my sister...
What is it?
A foot massager.
Exactly.
A foot massager. You stick your feet in there, and it massages your feet. I have about 4 of them now down in my basement. I think they cost $19.99.
Okay, but that's not the question.
What
the question is when all of us, or like 5 of us, we're discussing kitchen appliances, why would you include the foot massager
I don't know.
in the discussion?
I
You
don't
said,
know.
ooh, I've got a foot massager.
Well, you talk about, I was just thinking of appliances in general that
I
people
see.
have, and ones that you accumulate because people keep buying them for you, even though you never use them and you don't know quite what to do with them.
By the way, this anonymous texter says, if a foot massager is her favorite kitchen appliance, what does Marjorie eat? I think that's a very good, question.
I eat a lot of vegetables. I eat a lot of peanut butter, a lot of tuna
that was
fish.
facetious,
I eat a
then.
lot of cake.
You do?
I do, and I just
This
ate
cake
the cake
was
that we
fabulous.
have. Yes, from the Lehrhaus. It was absolutely unbelievable.
That orange thing.
Not to mention the cheesecake from Mamaleh.
Arlene in Plymouth.
Oh, here's a good one.
Hold on, Arlene. Sorry.
Is a martini shaker considered a kitchen appliance?
I bet it is, actually.
Yes,
I think it is.
Absolutely.
My favorite kitchen appliance is Rama and text, the refrigerator, which I think is probably a good one. Arlene in Plymouth, what's up with you? Hello.
Hi, I'm the air fryer person.
Oh, good. Take it away.
Yeah. I don't cook really.
Yeah.
I want things fast,
Yeah.
and I use the air fryer for like baked potatoes,
Yeah.
sweet potatoes. There are frozen things that come, frozen vegetables. You put them in there, they cook really well. Air fryer is a blessing, and it's a really cheap one. I paid $65 for it at Kohl's, and I've had it for several years, and it's my favorite thing.
Now, let me ask you something, Arlene. What do you think about somebody who's not a terrific cook, who has an air fryer and has never used it? What do you think of that?
I'm working on it.
I think that is not a good thing. I think you should probably figure out how to use it.
I should figure out how to use it. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, go ahead, Arlene.
Especially especially if you're eating a lot of vegetables, because it's really easy.
Yeah, that's
How
what they
about
say.
Arlene? That was an excellent
Well,
air fryer call.
When I
Thank
started
you.
to learn how to cook something, I just cook it over and over again in the same way. I roast the vegetables. But listen to Sam in Fairhaven. He's got a real sad story here.
What is it?
He says, Marjorie, my wife overheard your story about the wooden spoons and spatulas. The image really got to her. Alas, they are now in our trash.
Exactly. By the way, if you just tuned in, what he's talking about, wooden spoons and spatulas, is sex toys.
Yes, sex toys.
Which they were in Attleboro a couple of decades ago.
That's right.
That's correct. Let's go to Elaine. I don't know who's on the phone, but whoever it is, Elaine, you are in Cambridge. And, Elaine, we were talking to you about your tea kettle. Take it over. Take it again. Go.
Yes, thank you. And
are you backing up as you're talking to us or what? No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Okay. It's a fire alarm.
It's a bad joke. Go ahead. What's up? Go ahead.
For anyone who drinks a lot of tea or coffee, an electric tea kettle is an absolute game changer. The best thing I've ever bought. It's amazing.
Now, by the way, is yours glass? Because one of the great joys that my older daughter has with hers is you can watch it when the water starts boiling, and it's quite beautiful. Is yours glass?
Yes.
Is it?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
yes.
It's beautiful.
Yes, you got to have glass.
Elaine,
and
I'm glad. Yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
I also second the citrus squeezer. I've got both kinds.
Yeah.
And also, I never use my garlic press because it's the most annoying kitchen appliance.
Yeah, but can I tell you something, Elaine? I understand the cleaning issue that a lot of people are raising. The satisfaction you feel when you have successfully cleaned it is really worth the effort to get there. Try it and let me know what you think, okay?
Considering a sous vide, too.
Well, you should. It's great. Jewel is a great brand, by the way. Elaine, thank you very much for your call.
Several people, and I missed it because my text is weird today, microwaves. That's their favorite gadget. People love their microwaves.
I didn't even consider that a thing. Now, Karen in Newton, I'm so glad she texted because I feel the same way she did. I am embarrassed to be listening to this segment, and I am even more embarrassed to be texting you about this segment. My best deal was an air popcorn popper purchased for $5 in a garage sale. That's beautiful.
A good one. That
is really moving, Karen. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
You know, a couple of weeks ago we talked about the George Foreman grills because George Foreman had just died.
Yes, we did.
Great heavyweight fighter. Well, Connie from South Natick says it's a lifesaver for condo residents if you plan to grill and it's raining outside or bad weather. You got the George Foreman grill right there on your counter in the kitchen.
I don't even. So Marjorie started this again with Paddleboro. And so here's what anonymous texter says. Kitchen appliances as sex toys. Breaking news. Texas bans electric toothbrushes and cucumbers. And again, that was not us.
Okay.
That was a texter.
Remember the woman that was pulled over in security because her toothbrush?
Oh, yes, I do. It was
started to go off
vibrating.
in her
That's
suitcase,
correct.
and they pulled her over. And it was very, very embarrassing. A lot of people have stuff from their mothers and grandmothers.
Well, let's hear some of those.
You know what's kind of cool? Well, I can't find them. My text is weird today.
Okay, good.
But you know what's kind of cool when you have your grandmothers, some people say they're cast iron pans or their bowls that they made cakes in. You know, it's like the people are gone, but the china that they used or the bowls that they used or the pans that they used are still there, like decades after they've died.
That's nice. Did I tell you the beautiful story? I'm sure I've told you this about my paternal grandmother, Sophie, who threw a small cast iron pan at my head. Do you remember that? No, I'm serious.
I do remember.
She was a beauty. She was really a lovely woman, just like her son, my father. Wonderful people. We have time for one more quick one. Buster in Lexington, you have 30 seconds. Take it away.
Frother. I have a frother. It is the greatest invention ever.
I'm with you. They're great. I love frothers.
I've been stirring like a fool for years, and now everything gets mixed brilliantly.
That is, by the way, you had the level of energy that we were looking for in everybody. That was a beautiful call, Buster. It really was a perfect capper to an excellent discussion.
Now, do you use the frother? Is he still there? No, is he gone? Okay.
I have a frother. I can answer your question.
Do you use it for espresso?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I use
What
mine
else do you use it for?
It's great. Sometimes, though, it doesn't get hot enough, doesn't get the milk hot
Well,
enough.
you know what you do? You keep the frother in there a little longer.
Keep it on there a little bit longer.
Thank
you know
you
what
very
happens
much.
if you put the froth milk in the microwave?
Yeah, what happens?
It ruins the whole thing.
Well, don't put it in the microwave.
Okay.
Okay, fine. Jared Bowen is here. I know it's early again today because we have the auditor for the end of the show. So Jared is here to tell us what he is doing at 2 o'clock on the what's it called? The Culture Show. Thank you very much. 2 o'clock, Jared Bowen. Take it away, Jared.
Okay, we're going to have Amor Tolls on this show. Of course, he's the author of Rules of Civility, Gentlemen in Moscow, Lincoln Highway. I had a conversation with him last fall when his book came out, because his book is divided in two, his new book, best-selling Table for Two. So this part of the conversation, we're going to talk about the novella, which takes us to the golden age of Hollywood and reacquaints us with one of his earlier characters. We'll talk with the Paul Revere House about all the upcoming festivities surrounding the midnight ride of Paul Revere on this 250th anniversary. And Mahesh Das from Boston Architectural College is here to talk about how the pandemic has actually opened up a lot of opportunity for higher ed.
Now, if you think I was rude because I didn't ask you what your favorite kitchen appliance was, the reason I didn't is because, as all of our listeners know, you have nothing in your kitchen.
That's not true.
So it is very hard to use an appliance. No. You do?
My appliance is actually not an appliance. It's poach pods.
Poach pods?
For making poached
eggs.
eggs.
I bought them. I bought them like a month ago. I haven't used them yet.
Oh, they are amazing.
I bought them. They float in the water, and you just plop the egg. By the way, if you guys can check, the Dow Jones was flat all day, and it's now up 2,000 points, which I assume means Trump authorizes 90-day pause on some tariffs.
Oh, there you go.
So 2,000-point increase. And I think, as we remember, Donald Trump is not moving on these tariffs until he did. So people can feel a little better. Jared, do you have something more to say, or are you done?
Well, I just want to know which of the two of you is going to text me Juliette Kayyem's gossip during your upcoming break.
Oh, my God.
Because I want to know.
It is so good, and it is so low that I think you'll really love it. So we'll be in touch.
Okay, I look forward to it.
We'll be listening
right
to
now.
2 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Okay, bye.
Jared Bowen, we
See you
appreciate
later,
it.
Jared. Thank you.
So much. Yep.
Okay, up next, we're going to talk to the, well, Jim is going to talk. I got to leave early today.
Where are you going?
Undisclosed.
No, really,
undisclosed location.
What are you doing? Marjorie's leaving at 1:30, even though we're paid
I'm going
to
to
stay
go
here
gossip
till 2.
with Juliette.
Okay,
we're going to continue
all
the
right,
gossip.
go ahead.
But anyway, up next, Diana DiZoglio, the state auditor. You all know 70% of you voted to audit the legislature. She is still endeavoring to get somewhere on that program. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, Governor Maura Healey talks about how the Trump tariffs will affect Massachusetts. Worcester leaders are pushing for an emergency plan to address homelessness. And actress Taylor Dearden has been praised for her portrayal of a neurodivergent doctor on the medical drama The Pit. We'll hear how Dearden's own neurodivergence informed her performance. That's all starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And the University of Massachusetts Amherst. United around a vision for public access to revolutionary education, UMass Amherst gives students the opportunity to seek solutions to the challenges of today. Learn more at umass.edu. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Dr. Anthony Fauci, Ken Burns, Outliers author Malcolm Gladwell, and freed Russian political prisoner Vladimir Kara-Murza. bostonspeakers.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I was going to say Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, but without Marjorie Egan, she'll be back tomorrow. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The governor will join us in person here for an hour of Ask the Governor. That's on April 25th. But right now we're joined live at the library by State Auditor Diana DiZoglio. She's here for the rest of the show for Ask the Auditor. And since Marjorie's gone, I guess I'm sharing hosting duties with the audience. If you have a question or a comment for the auditor about anything, you can call her or text her at 877-301-8970. And if you're here at the library, is Nicole going to be over there in a second? Oh, there you are. Hi, Nicole. Nicole's going to be sitting there in a second. If you have a question or comment for the auditor and you're here already, refuses to comply, saying there's a separation of powers issue, you urge the Attorney General to act, and she told us on our show that she actually voted for your question. Have we seen any progress in the months since we saw you, or are we locked in place where we are?
Unfortunately, we haven't seen any progress. Our office continues to answer questions that the Attorney General's office is asking us about the scope of our audit, what we're auditing, how we're auditing, and we answer those questions. We send back our responses, only to essentially be met with more questions, Jim. And while we're happy to participate in the process that the Attorney General sees fit to use, we still don't know if the Attorney General is willing to represent the people. So our concern is that the responses that we're giving to the Attorney General right now could be being used to actually build a case against the people on this issue. And that fear is born out of the reality that when we previously asked the Attorney General to help us the first time we tried to audit the legislature, before the ballot question actually was born, the Attorney General sided with the legislature and built a very lengthy defense on their behalf against the auditor's office, only after engaging with us for months and asking us similar questions. So we really are just asking the Attorney General to say, do you support the people on this? Absolutely. And are you representing the people on this, so that we know where we stand and we know if we have a representative in the Attorney General's office. And if not, then we do need the Attorney General's blessing to get our own attorney to represent us.
So let me just be clear. You're basically seem to be saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I want to be clear. You're saying you fear that the Attorney General may be playing you to learn as much about what your strategy or approach is, and then end up not representing you and siding with the legislature on this? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that we would appreciate it if the Attorney General would be more forthcoming on her position regarding this legal issue. We have a dispute right now with the state legislature, which is what the Attorney General wanted to see. Our dispute is that we've requested financial documents and state contracts. That's it. We are not in a dispute with the legislature over our right to audit. We're not in a dispute with the legislature over the Constitution. What our dispute is with the legislature is that we have requested financial documents and state contracts that we have the authority to access under law, and they have refused to provide those documents. So really, we're just asking the Attorney General to agree with us that those financial documents and state contracts should be given to the auditor's office. And by the way, Jim, those documents should be given to the entire general public. Those documents are a matter of public record in every other state entity and municipality who follows the public records law. And if the legislature didn't exempt themselves from the public records law, those documents would be available to everybody. So we are only asking right now for basic financial documents, and that's all we're really asking the Attorney General for help on at this time.
Well, when you say there's not an issue with you about your right to audit, there's not an issue with you about your right to audit. The legislature's contention is, despite the passage of the ballot question, which becomes law, it is law of Massachusetts now, they argue that law is unconstitutional because you don't have the right to audit. But I want to go back to the thing I am totally unclear about, and I almost feel, not that you need my advice, that you and the Attorney General should agree that there's an arbitrator, an independent person respected by both sides. I'm more than happy to do this, to resolve I don't understand. She keeps saying, well, in fact, let's play a little sound from here. Here's the Attorney General with John Keller on BZ, I think this past weekend, talking about questions of constitutionality, about a potential legislative audit, which she says she supports. Here it is.
There are constitutional limitations on what the auditor can audit of another branch of government, namely the legislature. So we have been working with her. And although she's out there publicly suggesting that we are the barrier to this audit, that's just not true. When we approve a ballot question in this state, we approve it, but the sad part is it doesn't go through whether or not it is constitutional. So it's backwards, right? So we clearly have to change that. But most folks don't know that, so we will keep pushing on their behalf.
Okay, so let me clarify something without losing people. For a ballot question to be certified by an Attorney General in Massachusetts, it has to comply with certain provisions in the Constitution. It's called Article 48. And that says things like you can't do a ballot question relating to religion, you can't do a ballot question that relates to appropriation of funds. It doesn't address the issue of whether or not there's something like a separation of powers issue. We all agree to this. The issue I'm trying to raise, and I think I raise it with you every month, so please don't get aggravated. I don't understand how there is a disconnect between what the Attorney General says she needs to learn from you before she is able to decide which side she's on legally. Where's the disconnect?
Join the club. Join the club. We have been very...
You say to her, what more do you need from me?
Yes.
And what does she say to you?
Yes. Keeps asking questions and suggesting publicly that she needs more answers from our office, and said that the state auditor's office needs to provide her with the legal analysis for her to be able to do her job. And I have said, well, I'm happy to use my psychology and Spanish degree to contribute to the conversation. There's a reason why I ran for state auditor and not for the Attorney General's office. I am not an attorney. And the reason why we reached out to the Attorney General's office is because she is the attorney for the state agencies, and we very much need the people's attorney to be the attorney for the people. If we were able to do it for ourselves, we wouldn't need to go through their office and ask for their guidance, for their assistance, and for their representation. I do not believe, Jim, that we are going to ever see the Attorney General's support on this, and it's hard for me to say that.
Wait, do you mean that she'll never take a position, or that ultimately she'll take a position contrary to what the voters said they wanted?
Either of those, but I do not think that the Attorney General is going to side with the people on getting access to those documents. And when we hear the rationale for why there's been no position taken, but then we hear, that the ballot question was cleared constitutionally in certain respects to go to the ballot. And then we hear that the Attorney General claims to have voted for this. The Attorney General hasn't really spoken to me about any of this. We didn't talk about if she was going to support it. We didn't hear about any support during the campaign. I was surprised to learn that she said she had voted for it.
Well, I asked her, standing right where you are, and she said she voted for it.
I was surprised to hear that because we hadn't seen any support, and we're still not seeing any support. So when I heard that, I thought, well, okay, maybe we're going to have a change of heart here, and maybe we're going to see some support for accessing these documents. But the reality is that what I continue to hear is more rationale for keeping us out of court. And I have to say this. We have said very clearly, if the Attorney General feels as though she doesn't want to pick a side, maybe she did vote for it. If she still doesn't want to pick a side and defend the law that she claims to have voted for, then I would say it's incumbent upon her to at least make sure that we have representation from a special assistant attorney general of our choice.
Other attorneys general have done that, even picked outside counsel from time
if they
to time.
say, I believe I have a conflict, or I think that there's some issue here, or I can't represent both of you, or I can see both sides.
She's not saying there's a conflict. She's just saying you're not giving her enough information. By the way, I should give the number. It's 877-301-8970 if you have questions or comments for Auditor Diana DiZoglio. My apologies, Auditor.
That's okay. That's okay. So what she is claiming is that she believes there are constitutional limitations. I think that even just that statement suggests that the office is looking for constitutional limitations instead of looking for ways to make sure the law is followed. So certainly when you have an attorney representing you, you want to know that that attorney's on your side. And what I'm saying is, I have no reason to believe that the Attorney General is on our side, because all the things that we've been hearing from the AG's office is reasoning behind why they think a constitutional limitation would apply. And I've said, look, I'm happy to talk about these constitutional concerns of yours. I just want to know why you're all trying to keep me out of court, because that's for a judge to decide. The Attorney General's not a judge, and neither are our legislators. The Senate's having hearings about this law.
Yeah, you refused to go to a hearing. The Senate had a hearing about this where they theoretically wanted to discuss with you the issues that are separating you, and you refused to show. Why?
It was a show trial. It was a kangaroo court, and senators were seating themselves in the position of judges. Talk about unconstitutionality. They were seating themselves in the position of being the judge and the jury on a matter of law that impacts them directly, saying essentially that they're going to decide what the Constitution says about the law that we voted for.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, I'm sorry to dig deep into the weeds here, but I think this matters. And again, our number is 877-301-8970 to call, or actually there's some text, I'll read them in a second here, but you can call that number, or if you can see in the call over there if you have a question here at the library. What I don't understand is this. I'm assuming, please correct me if I'm wrong, that you said to the Attorney General, whoever you're dealing with in her office, here are the things we want to audit in the legislature. Am I right so far? So she can either conclude they violate the separation of powers or they don't. And I'm assuming she wants an exhaustive list. And here's my question. Why haven't you said to her, tell us if these are appropriate in your estimation, in which case let's go to court and make them happen. And if at some point in the future, my office, meaning the auditor's office, says they want X, and the legislature objects, then you could say, in that case, we've gone too far, and that's a violation of the Constitution. Are you saying this kind of thing?
That's exactly what we've been saying. We've actually been repeatedly telling the Attorney General's office that we don't understand why they're asking us about hypothetical, potential future requests that we may or may not make to the legislature. We are talking about the requests that we have made now, and I have said over and over again on this show and everywhere else I've been talking, that we have on purpose limited our requests during this time period because we very much knew that somebody in the legislature or elsewhere on Beacon Hill was going to be very likely to make a stink about our requests and suggest unconstitutionality. So in these beginning stages, what we decided to do for the sake of moving something forward is we were very narrow in the scope of our requests in this attempt to get access to information purposefully, because it's undeniable that financial information and state contracts are certainly within the realm of what we are able to examine. We've had people come to us and say, well, we're not really sure about this thing that you want to look at or that thing that you want to look at. And what we've told people is, look, we have conversations with the entities that we audit about what is appropriate. We want to make sure that we're not interfering with any of the work that we're doing. We don't have the authority or power to interfere with any aspects of people's work. We go in, we look at the documents, the processes and procedures, and we write a report. Essentially, we are public service journalists. That's really what the office does. We don't have the authority like what you see at the federal level happening with the appointee slashing budgets and breaking government down. We in the auditor's office do not have that type of authority. We only have the authority to audit, draft a report, shine a light on what's happening in government, and then we can make some recommendations, but they ultimately get to decide whether or not they want to accept the findings of the audit and whether or not they want to take action. We have no authority to force anything, just report on things. So if they're denying that opportunity to the taxpayers to see how their money's being spent, and if the Attorney General's office is going to continue to conclude that they have concerns about separation of powers or constitutional limitations, I would like the Attorney General to answer if she believes those financial documents and those state contracts are out of bounds, because I certainly don't believe that the Constitution says that taxpayers don't have a right to see how their money's being spent and to see how contracts are being executed.
An anonymous texter says a question, actually asked one that I should have asked. Are the communications between your office and the Attorney General's office public?
They're attorney-client privilege, however, because we are giving our legal...
She's not your lawyer.
We are giving... I'm actually most likely going to be releasing the interactions.
Why don't you do that?
I'm actually thinking about it. My attorney in our office is going through the interactions to make sure we're not giving away our, legal position or, setting the office up for, folks to come after this question unintentionally so. But I do think that moving forward, that those attorney-client conversations that are supposedly attorney-client because supposedly we're being represented when we don't know if we are, I really would like, since the Attorney General keeps claiming we're not answering her questions, she should make those requests moving forward public so the entire general public can help us to answer questions.
Let me just say to you, you are not a lawyer. I was a not great lawyer, but I know the following. An attorney, you are the client, potentially. You're not the client yet. Do you know who has the power to waive the attorney-client privilege? The client. Meaning, if you said right now, Diana DiZoglio, if there is an attorney-client privilege, which there may or may not be, even though she's not formally representing you, you could say right now, we are waiving it. We are going to disclose every single thing that we have sent to the Attorney General. We are granting permission to our possible lawyer to do the same. You have unilateral power to waive that privilege. So do you want to say here now that you would waive it so those documents be public?
I actually think that we should waive it. Yeah, I do.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
You would waive it.
Yes.
And say to her, release everything we've sent to you.
Yeah.
Well, you will too.
Yeah,
and
on
release
this
all your
issue.
responses. Fine. Okay, great.
On this issue. And you know what the reality is, Jim? I do think that people would be better served to see those interactions.
Well, I think so too.
And I think that demonstrating that we have responded when it's been claimed that we haven't, is something that certainly our staff in our office would very much appreciate.
So should we expect to see the letters, the communications from your office the next day or two?
Sure.
Great. You'll share them with us and
I
in
will.
public.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Jason in Newburyport, you're first on Boston Public Radio with Auditor Diana DiZoglio. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thank you.
Jim and Marjorie, I don't know if you know, Diana has a wonderful singing voice. So you should not let her off your show.
We don't plan
until she sings. God bless
Jamie's
her.
rolling his eyes.
So, Jason, one, we know she's singing. She has always graciously, I hope including today, agreed to sing for our audience. And as a matter of fact, we were going to end the show today with her permission for her singing for you, Jason, and other people. Is that okay with you? She's nodding yes. Jason, thank you for an excellent request. I should say, I have a few more things about this.
Sure.
Because I think, and by the way, we ordinarily don't delve into things, an individual law this deeply, but one, because the vote was as overwhelming as it was, 72% is huge, and two, because there's such overt resistance on the part of the legislature, we feel we owe it to the public. I'm not sure I'm right about this, but I'm sure you've looked at this. It seems to me there are two ways to find out from a court whether or not you are exceeding constitutional limits around separation of powers or not. One is for the Attorney General to represent you and let a court determine that. The other way is you were a legislator for a while there. Don't legislative leaders have the power to request an advisory opinion on a legal issue? So Ron Mariano, who's the speaker, was asked this question the other day, and she said, why would we ask for an opinion? She's the one driving the question, which is amazing to me in light of the fact that she, Diana DiZoglio, is driving the question with 72% of the people who voted in the election. Have you asked them to request an advisory opinion?
I have, yes.
And what's the problem with that?
When they were holding the trial, purported to be a hearing the other day, to try to themselves determine constitutionality on this issue, I called on them, again, to take this matter to the SJC for an opinion. They have the authority to do that, whereas I have to go through the Attorney General's office. You know, by the way things work with state agencies, they have the authority in the legislature to go directly to the SJC. So I have said, you know, I don't believe there is a constitutional issue with anything that I have requested up to this point, sticking with those financial and state contracts that we've requested and financial documents. But if you do think that, it is not for you to decide in your trial purported to be a hearing while leaving out the courts from this conversation.
And what'd they say to that?
We haven't gotten a response. That was my response to essentially reporters who actually called and asked what my response was. But, you know, we called on them multiple times through the last however many, it's been years now, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that we've been having this conversation long before the ballot question. And we said this the first time we tried to audit. They said, well, we don't believe this is constitutional. And I said, okay, well then we will go to court, we'll have a judge decide, and the judge can tell us whether or not we're allowed to do an audit. The Attorney General blocked us from court, gave us a unilateral decision on what she thought about constitutionality, said she was not going to allow us to access a court, and then the legislature refused to get an opinion at that time, and the ballot question was born. Now that we passed the ballot question, I understand that everybody might still have the same feelings, but this is not just something that was the law prior to the ballot question. Now it is codified and spelled out very clearly in the law that they are required to be audited. So we've been fighting to get access to a court. And I understand that a judge may side with us or not with us, but that is the appropriate method.
Well, and the only reason as an observer of this and as a voter, the only reason the legislature wouldn't ask for an advisory opinion is because they're afraid they're going to lose. Obviously, if they were convinced they were in such solid ground, they'd go to the SJC, Supreme Judicial Court, highest court in the state, ask for an advisory opinion. If they believe they're right, hopefully from their perspective, the court would agree with them. Jesse in Westport, you're on with Diana DiZoglio, the state auditor. Welcome to the show, Jesse. Hi.
Hey, thanks. So I'm an attorney. I graduated law school recently, so all this is very fresh.
Yeah. That's it?
And what I wanted to say was I really think the auditor has got to figure out a way to get around this. You've got to make your stuff public so people know what's going on. I totally agree with that. I just think you got to keep trying.
Thank you.
Jesse, let me just say, since she apparently won't, she couldn't be more public on this issue that is near and dear to her heart as a human and as a public official than she's been.
Maybe I can get louder.
Maybe. Well, you're going to sing in a minute, so you can get as loud as you want. Jesse, thank you very much for the call.
Thank you, Jesse.
So, just to clarify for people before we end this, you do not have the power to go out and hire a lawyer on your own to represent you because you are part of the state. Unless the Attorney General agrees to represent you, you're unrepresented. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct, yes.
Secondly, the other route to get there is if the legislature was so concerned about the constitutionality, Senate President or the Speaker could say to the SJC, we'd like an advisory opinion to find out if you agree with us in the legislature that this law violates the state constitution's separation of powers thing. That's another avenue.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Last thing before I end the show, and then you're going to sing us out. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Great. Love that. There have been stories about, I'm not sure that they're suggesting you're thinking about it, but that others are thinking about it. Are you contemplating in the next election cycle running for anything other than auditor?
I have no plans for the next election cycle at all right now, actually. I am 1,000% focused on getting this issue resolved, making sure that our office is doing its due diligence, and I haven't started thinking about any potential campaigning. I'm honestly in recovery from the ballot question right now.
You have to move your mic up just about an inch.
And trying to finish our audits. Yeah, thank you so much.
How stressful has this whole thing been for you?
Yeah, I do the ice baths, Jim. So
I do every morning. How many minutes do you do that?
6 to 10 usually.
That's not, I told someone that story. It was in Boston Magazine. Is that where it was?
Yeah, it was in Boston Magazine. They covered it.
And the person I said it to, and she's pretty tough. The longest she's ever been able to do it is like a minute. She said it's not possible.
Yeah, well,
is it possible?
I keep the temperature between 34 to about 42. So when it's 42, it's usually balmy in there for me. But I will say yes.
Is that a stress reducer? Is that one of the reasons you do it?
Absolutely. Yes, I actually learned about it during the pandemic shutdown period when we were all kind of in our own heads. I did some research, Wim Hof breathing techniques.
I know all about Wim Hof.
Yes, so found it. I love it. I do those ice baths. They help a little bit. I'm a runner. I'm a hiker. I play my piano. Have a lot of the de-stressors, but I can tell you, yes, I'm persona non grata up on Beacon Hill right now. Not a lot of people are speaking to me, and that has been challenging. But I will say this. The vast majority of people that I've been speaking to out in our communities, whether they're on the liberal side or the conservative side, generally speaking, keep telling me to keep going, to keep pushing this, to keep working on this, and to make sure that gets done.
And this is a bipartisan thing. Other than the Democrats in the legislature, the Democratic Party has endorsed this.
The Democrats in the legislature that are stopping this do not represent Democratic values. So let's just be clear. Beacon Hill's no longer about Democrat, Republican. Beacon Hill is about people with power and then the rest of us. So we really need to keep working to address that culture of power, decentralizing that power, and getting back to the system of shared leadership that should be the case up on Beacon Hill.
Only so we can give you adequate time. All we're going to do is tell you what's happening tomorrow. Chuck Todd's going to join us, former head of Meet the Press, former Secretary of Public Safety Andrea Cabral, NPR's TV critic Eric Deggans, Paris Alston, our colleague, who just premiered her new show on GBH, the successor to Basic Black Cold Rooted, and Globe columnist Alex Beam's got a new book. And thanks to all of our staff, colleagues, that sort of thing. What are you going to sing?
I am going to sing You Gotta Be, and it's an old jam from, I think, the early 90s, late 80s maybe, but when I was a kid. I was born in 83. And it actually came on the other day, and, I'm a little bit of a baby recently, so my eyes started filling up. It was reminding me of childhood memories, but
fair enough.
Hopefully it encourages.
Auditor Diana DiZoglio.
Listen as your day unfolds, challenge what the future holds, try and hold your head up to the sky. People, they may cause you tears, go ahead, release your fears, stand up and be counted, don't be ashamed to cry. You gotta be bad, you gotta be bold, you gotta be wiser, you gotta be hard, you gotta be tough, you gotta be stronger. You gotta be cool, you gotta be calm, you gotta stay together. All I know is love will save the day. Herald what your mother said, read the books your father read, try to solve the puzzles in your own sweet time. Some may have more cash than you, others take a different view. My, oh my, yeah. You gotta be bad, you gotta be...
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Celebrity Series, presenting the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, featuring Mr. Ailey's timeless masterpiece, Revelations, April 24th through 27th at the Bach Center Wang Theater. Tickets at celebrityseries.org. On The Next Nature, meet the hippo, crocodile, and lion families who must navigate and survive a harsh dry season in Tanzania. Watch Katavi, Africa's Fallen Paradise. Tonight at 8 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org.